Janice, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, and we're recording.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Township of Montclair Planning Board in accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy, excuse me, of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and by sending a copy to the newspaper designated for the township for notices. Electronic notice of the meeting is provided by posting a copy of the notice along with access instructions on the township website and also attaching a copy to the main access door of the municipal building. This meeting is being broadcast live on channel 34 and is being streamed live and will be available on demand on YouTube. This will be a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that the board has powers and procedures resembling a court of law, and we are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide a basis for official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate for a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Members of the public will be automatically placed on mute until such time during the meeting that it is open for public questions or for comments. At that time, members of the public will be unmuted and may provide verbal questions or comments as appropriate. And if there's a failure in equipment where those verbal questions or comments cannot get through, they can be put into the chat or the question and answer function on the WebEx platform or by emailing our board secretary, Janice Talley at jtalley@montclairnjusa.org. Again, that's J-Talley, T-A-L-L-E-Y, at montclairnjusa.org. First thing on our agenda this evening is our roll call, and I am here.
Vice Chair Brodock,
I'm here.
Mr. Cook,
Here.
Mr. Graham,
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally,
Here.
Ms. Lockman, here. Councillor Schlager,
Here.
Mayor Spiller, Ms. Willis,
Here.
Chair Wynn,
Here.
Mr. Jacobson is excused, Mr. Neese,
I am here.
Mr. Chandler.
Here.
And we have John Jar here tonight on behalf of NV5 or Brightview Engineering as the board traffic engineer.
Here.
Okay.
All right.
So-
Next, we have minutes from our November 8th meeting.
I received changes to the minutes from Carmel and from Keith. Are there any additional changes?
Yeah, hi, Janice. I noted that I think for 6 Depot Square, near the end of the meeting or maybe 3/4 through, Mr. Dresner, who owns the building next door, was complaining about potential noise. I do believe that the applicant agreed to put window glass on a knee wall on the north side of the open restaurant area. And I didn't see that in the minutes.
No, I didn't.
maybe-
We had a lot of conditions. I didn't put the conditions in the minutes
Oh, okay.
because those will be in the resolution.
Okay. If they're in the conditions, I'm fine.
I'm going to have at it, Tony.
Are there any other changes to the minutes?
If they're not, I will move that they be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
On me.
Okay.
I abstain too.
Cool.
Robin as well.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us to the application of Montclair Congregation of Jehovah Witness, 330 Orange Road.
Okay.
And Janice, I will be recusing myself from this due to my connection to the property across the street.
Okay. Rachel, I think I have unmuted you. I believe that you were, I can't make you a panelist, Miss Onifrak, but I can unmute you, and so if you turn your microphone on, we can hear you. And Ms. Dacko, I made you a panelist as well. So if you unmute yourself, we can hear you.
Janice, is there any reason why the applicant's attorney can't be seen?
For some reason, with the way I physically can't make her a panelist. It's not giving me that option. So I was able to make Rachel Dacko a panelist.
Can we send her the direct link, Janice?
I can try that. Hold on.
Hi, Janice. It's Rachel Dacko. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. I have probably almost never used this platform before, so forgive me if I do something wrong. Do you see the other members of our team on, our attorney?
I'm trying to get your attorney the information
Okay, thank you. If you need me, let me know.
to get access code. Should you just give me a minute? All right, so I sent her another link. Rachel, who else should I make a panelist from your group?
I believe besides our attorney, Rachel Onufrak,
I have, yeah,
there would
she's
be our engineer, Eric Brown,
okay.
and then Cliff Williams is one of the local representatives.
So Ms. Onufrak, I've unmuted you and I sent you another link. So hopefully with this other link, maybe you can join in and I can make you a panelist.
I was able to turn on my video and audio with the same link. Looks like a switch was flipped for me in some way. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Hello, everyone can hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
that's Mr. Williams. I can hear you.
Thank you.
John Wynn, perhaps I should make you an attendee. Since you have a conflict, Arthur, how do you want me to handle John's conflict?
Well, John should be, I mean, it doesn't matter. John's not going to participate, but if it would help to get Ms. Onufrak to become a panelist, to have John be in the audience or an attendee, that would probably be the best thing to do.
I don't think that has, oh, wait a minute, Ms. Onufrak can now be a panelist, okay. I think perhaps it might be better, yeah, well, John will just will be muted, I guess, throughout the presentation. All right. I think we have everybody here. Ms. Onufrak, you should be able to turn your microphone on.
Okay, I think I got it now.
Okay.
My goodness. Sorry about that. I could not see any way to turn anything on the first link you had sent, but this one, it worked out.
Okay, so I have all your experts here.
Excellent.
What exhibits do you want?
So we will be using a couple right now. One is actually a photograph that's in your review letters. It's a satellite photo with kind of like a red ring around the lot. It's figure 2. So we'll be using that one. And then we'd be using our site plan, the most recent one, and then the landscaping plan, the most recent one.
Okay.
And I'm not
So-
sure how you mark them and how that works with your township.
I'm just trying to pull them all up.
And good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So this is,
Okay, that's the site plan. So that will be the second one that we want to look at.
all right. This is my report.
Yeah, so I believe, which one is this? This is the most recent one?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just grab the page number, Sue.
And there was a landscape plan you wanted?
Yeah, that is the most recent thing we submitted. The picture that I was talking about, the satellite photos on page 3 of your report.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
And the last one would be the landscaping report.
I don't see the landscaping plan unless it's part, I'm looking at what was with the submission date.
Rachel, do you remember what date we submitted that? That was just before we got our hearing date.
Get up now. I'm just going to search the emails.
Yeah, isn't that the second page of that set there?
Isn't this it?
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there. We got it. Okay.
Good.
So you want to start with the aerial? Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, before we even begin with that, Janice, have you pre-marked any of the applicant's exhibits?
Yes. I have the application is A1, certification of taxes paid is A2, the certification of publication is A3, the affidavit of service is A4, the site plan, this is the old one, I'm gonna get the new one. The site plan, dated September 2nd, 2021 is A5. And that includes both sheets, the site plan and the landscape plan. And then we have my report, updated October 27th, is A6. Okay,
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
who's
Sure.
that?
This is Rachel Onifrak.
Okay.
So since you marked your report already as A6, do we have to mark that one photo in your report separate, or is it sufficient just to refer to the page?
I think you can just refer to the page in the report. That's A6.
Ronnie Frack, go ahead.
I can start? Okay. Good evening, Chairman Nguyen, members of the Planning Board, board professionals, and supporting staff. As I mentioned to you before, I'm Rachel Onifrak from the Law Office of Rachel Onifrak in Dover, New Jersey, and I represent this applicant, which is South Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, Montclair, New Jersey, Inc. As you may know, the applicant is located at 330 Orange Road in Montclair Township, and the property is known as Block 2905, Lots 2 and 3 on the Montclair Township tax map. The applicant is a conditional use in the neighborhood commercial zone district. So you'll hear that the applicant is seeking to install a fence around most of its property and to install some landscaping and make a minor adjustment to the parking lot striping. I also wanted to mention on the record that the applicant did give proper notice to the landowners within 200 feet of the property, and it was also published in the New Jersey Star Ledger newspaper within 10 days of today's date also. So to give you a little history, the application was initially filed with Montclair around May of this year. Ms. Talley issued her first review letter in June of this past year. And then after that, the applicant amended its request to add some variances and design waivers based upon conversations that we had. This matter was reviewed at a DRC meeting on August 5th, at which time the DRC asked the applicant to provide a revised landscaping plan, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then after that plan was submitted, we did get this hearing date, and Ms. Talley did update her review letter, I guess on, as she mentioned, on October 27th, 2021. So at the conclusion of our presentation, the applicant is going to ask the board for approval of any variances and design waivers that it deems necessary in order for the applicant to pursue the fencing and landscaping and line restructuring in their lot. And also they will be asking for preliminary and final minor site plan approval. So we would like to call 2 witnesses to testify in support of this application. And the first one is Ernest Clifford Williams, who is a representative of the applicant. The second one will be the engineer, who we'd like to call after. So do you mind if we begin calling our witnesses?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Williams. Now, do you typically swear the witnesses in one at a time?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
I can't really see you yet.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I see you, Mr. Williams.
How are
Mr.
you?
Williams, may I ask you to raise your right hand, please, sir? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And forgive me, are you testifying as a fact witness, as a representative of the applicant, or are you a professional that whose testimony is being put forward here?
As a fact witness.
Okay. Then we'll use the applicant's address as your address. Is that okay for you?
That's fine with me.
Great. Thank you, sir.
May I proceed?
Please do.
Please.
Okay. Mr. Williams, can you state your full name and spell it for the record?
My name is Ernest Clifford Williams. Ernest, E-A-R-N-E-S-T. Clifford, C-L-I-F-F-O-R-D. Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Are you a member of the South Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, Montclair, New Jersey, Inc., who is the applicant in this matter?
Yes.
How long have you been a member?
29 years.
Excellent. Do you hold a position of responsibility?
Yes, I currently serve as a trustee, and also I am the president of the South Congregation of Montclair of Jehovah's Witnesses, Montclair, New Jersey, Inc.
Thank you. So how long has the congregation owned the property at 330 Orange Road?
Since 1981.
Okay. And can you tell us how many congregations are assigned to meet there?
6.
Excellent. And how many people would you say would be in each congregation?
An average of 100 to 140.
Wow. Okay. So can you tell us what improvements you would like to make to the congregation's property?
Well, we would like to install a fence around the property, and also we would like to make some changes, some parking spaces in the parking lots, changes to the parking lots, parking spaces in the parking lot. Sorry, tongue-tied.
Was there anything you wanted to do with the landscaping?
Yes, and also fix that landscaping, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us why the congregation would like to make these changes?
Well, regarding the fence, we've had some incidences in the property, unfortunately. We've had individuals come into the parking lot. In case in particular, gentleman was very high. He pulled into the parking lot and started causing a ruckus, and the police were called for that. We also had individuals who trespassed the property. They cut through all the time, and even sometimes at a high rate of speed. We have individuals that use the awnings of the building to drink and smoke marijuana along the property. And we also had a incident where some young men came into the parking lot, hopped on the car that was in the parking lot, and also kicked the building from what it looked like at the same time. So it's really a matter of safety that brought this to, our concern.
Okay. Does anyone live in the building?
Yes.
Okay. And is it, have they voiced any concerns?
Yes, they've also voiced concerns. It was actually the resident's car who got, leapt upon and then in turn startled them in their home because they kicked the building, which was his residence.
Okay. Now, tell us about the landscaping issues. What would you like to do there?
Well, we would like to, install, with installing the fence, increase the greenery and restore it back on the property. And also we would like to take care of the concrete issues that might be there also.
Okay. And can you tell us whether the congregation benefits the community in any way?
Oh, yeah, tremendous. When we spend our time volunteering in the ministry which helps build individuals up both spiritually, as far as morals go, and just trying to be the best neighbor that we can be. We also pick up paper while we're removing paper and debris from our own property. We do that also in the community, and especially in the South End, especially in the little islands they have out there that they recently made. We pick the paper out of there, the paper off of Orange Road on the west side of the property, and up and down Orange Road also. And also we spend our time volunteering, conducting Bible studies, and just trying to help the general morale of our community.
Thank you very much. Do you happen to know how many parking spaces you have in the parking lot right now?
I believe it's 51.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions for Mr. Williams.
Okay, questions from the board?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, forgive me, I don't know the history of Jehovah's Witness. When you refer to a congregation, you're a house of worship?
The building is a place of worship, yes.
And so do you have tenants that live there, or is it the people who like are the head of the church? Or I don't even know if it's a church, I'm sorry.
It's a place of worship. That's a church, a place of worship.
Okay.
We have a travel missionary couple that stay there on the residence.
Okay. And they live there all year round? Like they're there all
Yes.
the time? All the time. It's not a seasonal thing. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so I was just curious, when your congregants come with the different sessions, there seems to be quite a lot. They all park in the parking lot and then in the surrounding area?
Yes.
Okay. And is the house of worship open? Is it Saturdays and Sundays mostly, or is it during the week as well? Or
There's a meeting for worship held in that building every day of the week.
every day? Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Questions from the public? Ms. Talley, do you want to open things up for our members of the public? I think you're muted, Janice. I think you're still muted.
It's not. May I ask a question?
Sure.
Janice, you're still muted.
Hi.
If you can just state your name and address, that would be helpful.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I own 339 Orange Road, the house that is across the church. I was just wondering, currently when we look at the church, we see trees right by the sidewalk. Is the fence going to be covering those trees, or is it going to be on the inside of the parking lot?
So I don't know if that's necessarily a question for Mr. Williams. I believe they're going to have, the applicant's going to have an engineer testify, I think, to the landscaping plan. So that, unless Mr. Williams wants to answer that, it might be better reserved for the engineer.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, it just to recap, and I don't know if we went over this in the beginning, but after each witness, there will be a time for the public to ask a question of that witness and regarding his or her testimony. And then we'll continue with each witness, and I think there's 2 witnesses with this application. And then at the end, if the public wants to make any comment, positive or negative about the application as a whole, they may do so at that time. So right now, we'll take questions from Mr. Williams, and I believe the entire public is unmuted. So if you do have a question, please just chime in, give us your name and address. If you can't do it verbally, you can use the chat feature or the Q&A feature of this WebEx platform.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from the public?
I don't think so.
Okay, we got your back, Janice. Okay, Ms. Onefrak.
Okay, I have no further questions for Mr. Williams. I would like to call our second witness, Eric Brown.
Hello.
Yes. Mr. Brown, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can I ask you to please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
My full name is Eric Reuben Brown, ERIK REUBEN BROWN. And I'm a volunteer, so I don't work for a specific firm, but I am, again, an engineer volunteering on behalf of the congregation for this application.
Are you testifying as the applicant's engineer?
Yes, sir.
Are you licensed in the state of New Jersey as an engineer?
I am.
Great, thank you.
So, Mr. Nice, is that how you pronounce your last name?
It's actually pronounced Nice.
Nice. Okay, Mr. Nice. So, would you like me to qualify Mr. Brown further? Because I was going to ask him a little bit about his expertise, unless you're satisfied.
The choice is not really mine. The board, it's really the board chair, or in this case, the vice chair. However, if Mr. Brown is going to be testifying as an expert, I would imagine that his credentials in that field should be put onto the record.
I agree. I agree. So would you please share your educational background with us, Mr. Brown?
Yes. So I acquired a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida in 2005 with a minor in mathematics. That's my educational background. Yeah.
Can you also tell us about your engineering experience, including what field of engineering is your specialty?
Sure. So I've been a registered professional engineer since 2010 with a focus on forensic engineering and site development.
Okay, and you already testified that you're a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever testified as an expert before?
Yes.
Okay, in what types of matters?
I've been deposed for forensic engineering investigations, as well as on several occasions testified before planning boards and zoning boards in relation to site plan applications, sort of like this one.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Brown regarding his qualifications?
None for me. Anyone from the board?
I just a couple of quick follow-ups, Mr. Brown, just because I want to make sure the record is clear. You have a current license. You're currently licensed in the state of New Jersey.
Yes.
And has that license? When did you acquire that license?
2017.
And has that license ever been suspended or otherwise terminated for any reason?
No.
That's terrific. Thank you very much.
Sure.
If there's nothing further, I would like to tender Eric Brown as an expert in the field of civil engineering.
We'll accept them.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Brown, can you walk us through the improvements that the applicant would like to make to its property?
Yes. Would it be appropriate for me to direct the attention to the aerial photograph that was just up there?
That's, there you go.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. Just briefly, we can see that the property is an irregularly shaped piece of property, basically a peninsula. It is bordered by Orange Road West on the west side and Orange Road to the east. We also note that there is basically a combined use residential and commercial to the north on the adjoining neighborhood commercial zoned lot to the north.
Okay, and
So-
before we go further, I would just like for the purposes of the record to reflect that this satellite photo is page 3 of Ms. Talley's review letter dated October 27th, 2021. So would you like us to turn to the site plan next, Mr.
Yes,
Brown?
please.
And if you could utilize the site plan and walk us through the changes, please.
Thank you. This basically what you're seeing here is an overlay of our proposed improvements over the existing survey of the property. You can see along the perimeter an aluminum fence, which will be 6 feet tall. Just to address the member of the public's concern earlier, that fence will be on the inside of the landscaping. So just to kind of give the orientation there. Also, we're going to have in that fence vehicular gates, as well as 2 vehicular gates, one to the east, one to the west, as well as 3 pedestrian gates that will be accessible. In addition, part of the work that will be done as this fence is being constructed along with the gates is we'll be removing 2 encroaching pilasters along the east driveway entrance. So those are currently encroaching on the township right away, so those will be removed. And further, we are making some minor adjustments to the ADA parking, which you see in dark markings by will be the west end of the building, near the top of that plan, right? So that is just a little bit of tweaking of those existing stalls to provide a better access for vehicles that are going to be circulating in that area. So those are the primary modifications, again, for safety and for good circulation and safe egress within the property.
Thank you. And can we turn to the second page of Exhibit A5, the landscaping plan? And perhaps you can walk us through those changes, Mr. Brown.
Sure. So as part of the work for this, as was requested by the DRC, we did take an inventory of all the existing plantings, well over 100 existing plantings. As our arborist was investigating those plantings, we found that many were dead or dying. So we did provide for replacement of those dead or dying plantings, both along the perimeter and also on the interior landscaping islands. So to help improve the screening, as well as improve the aesthetic value of those plantings, we're going to be doing a good bit of work there to accomplish that.
Excellent. So can you please tell us what ordinance applies to the installation of a fence?
Sure. So that's Montclair Code 347-27D. And it states generally that open fences, which are defined as having 25% or less solid areas or voids of dimension not less than 2 inches, not exceeding 6 feet in height, may be erected on the property of any church, school, cemetery, or public playground.
Thank you. And does the proposed fence satisfy that ordinance, Mr. Brown?
Yes, as Ms. Talley had stated in her review letter, we are proposing to install a 6-foot fence, and it does meet the criteria for an open fence, so it satisfies the ordinance.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Brown, are any variances required in order for the applicant to proceed with this project?
Yes, so Montclair Code Section 347-96 requires a 10-foot setback from a front property boundary to a parking lot and requires appropriate landscaping in the intervening space. So again, just kind of thinking back to the way that this property is oriented, it is essentially a corner lot, so it could be viewed as having multiple front yards as it's bordered by Orange Road to the east and Orange Road West to the west and southwest. So we know that portions of the applicant's parking area have had less than a 10-foot setback since at least 1982, since the property was developed out for this use as a place of worship, according to one of the applicant's members. And even a 1999 survey of the applicant's property really depicted a similar setback to what we see today. So since this property is irregularly shaped, to try and achieve that 10-foot setback now would require removing a large portion of the asphalt, which would then impact the parking stall lengths, would impact the ability of the circulation in the drive aisles, and that would create additional nonconformances by really eliminating some of the parking stalls that are required. And it would limit also the usability of the parking lot, which is the purpose that it's been used for decades, for associated with the Kingdom Hall place of worship.
Right. And you mentioned something about the ordinance requiring landscaping in the intervening space between the parking lot and the property border. What is the issue that also this whole variance plays into with that issue?
It's a good point. So as we can see, the property line, especially along the south, excuse me, the northwest and along the east corners or property lines, the parking lot really goes right up to the property line, and so there really is no intervening space currently. So there's no room to install the landscaping that's required by code. However, there is existing landscape screening, as one of the members of the public mentioned, when they look at the parking lot right now, they're seeing screening. They're seeing the existing landscape that is screening the parking lot. So we're asking for a variance from the zoning requirement to allow us to use that existing screening and, of course, improve, as we mentioned earlier, to meet the intent or the spirit of this zoning requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And I just want to clarify, you had mentioned there is a hedge around the perimeter of the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay. Do you happen to know who planted it?
Yes, it's our understanding that the applicant planted that, again, decades ago when it was required as part of the development of the property.
Okay. And is it on applicant's property, the hedge?
No, portions of it do extend over the property line, again, especially along the eastern property line.
Okay. Thank you. So that would be in the town right-of-way area? Is that?
Yes.
What is believed? Okay. All right, Mr. Brown, I'd like to talk a little bit about it, but about the burden of proof that the applicant has to meet. The applicant is seeking a C1 hardship variance. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And so in order to establish a hardship variance, it needs to meet positive and negative criteria as outlined in the municipal land use law. So to meet the positive criteria, the applicant has to show that the failure to grant the variance will result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties or exceptional and undue hardship because of several factors. Were you able to identify whether there is sufficient narrowness, shallowness, or because of the shape of this property, there is undue hardship or practical difficulties in terms of meeting this particular ordinance?
Yes. Again, just looking at the property, it does have an irregular shape. It's very narrow across portions of it. And so the way that the property has been developed tries to make the best use of this layout, and it has served its purpose, again, for decades. Trying to strictly adhere to that 10-foot setback along the west and the east property lines, it would greatly reduce the number of parking stalls available. And again, this is directly related, we feel, to the shape of the property. By trying to adhere to that 10-foot setback, It would generate additional nonconformances. It would impact the usability of the property. And really we feel that it would no longer be able to meet the parking ratio, which is required based on the amount of existing seating in the building. So it would be, we feel, hardship, an undue hardship to try to strictly meet this zoning ordinance criteria.
Thank you. So do you agree that the applicant would meet the positive criteria in terms of the municipal land use law and to achieve a variance?
Yes, yes, the C1 flexible,
I think we're doing a hardship variance,
or
right?
excuse me, the C1 hardship variance.
Okay. So also the applicant has to meet the negative criteria under the municipal land use law, which is that, and I'm very tongue-tied tonight, I'm sorry, excuse me. The variances have to be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and the variance cannot substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. And that's a mouthful, of course, but I'd love to take the first one, which is, do you feel the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good?
Yes, I do. And really just to take one piece of it, we'll take the landscaping portion. The hedge perimeter the perimeter hedge that's there existing right now, it's been in place for decades. It's performing well. So not providing an additional adjacent landscape buffer, it would not have a negative impact on the community, because the way it is currently right now, it's functioning, it's serving its purpose. It's providing the visual screening for those lots across Orange Road and Orange Road West. Even again, as was mentioned by the member of the community who lives across Orange Road. So we believe that it would not cause a detriment to the public good to grant a variance for that, for that zoning ordinance requirement.
And also, would it serve the public good not to withdraw 10 feet of asphalt from the parking lot?
We believe so. Again, the members of these congregations are members of the community, and so having sufficient access to park, not reducing the number of stalls, number one, benefits those members of the community that do attend this congregation. In addition, it prevents overflow of congregants onto the public parking, which, as we understand, is very limited, very hard to get a hold of. So by allowing the existing parking lot to continue to serve its purpose, not shrinking it in size, it removes vehicles that would otherwise be using public on-street parking.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And the other component of negative criteria that has to be established is that the variance, if granted, cannot substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. Do you feel that in this case, this variance would not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance?
Yes. So we understand that Montclair refers to its zone plan as a master plan, and the 2021 Unified Land Use and Circulation Plan element of the master plan says that one of the township's goals is, and I quote, to ensure a variety of land uses and transportation modes that pursue a balanced mix of activities and vibrancy. Also, one of the objectives of the master plan that is stated there is to promote more efficient use of existing and proposed parking infrastructure. So we feel that it goes right in harmony with these intents, with these portions of the master plan. Granting the variance would not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan, but instead would rather serve to support it. We believe that the continued use of the existing parking lot, allowing us to maintain the good circulation, to improve the safety, as we mentioned, benefits the surrounding community by keeping those additional cars off the street. And we know that this house of worship has been in use, established use for decades. So this will continue to benefit those congregants who are members of the community, having access to this place of worship, which we know is very important to the community right now.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Now, I have another question for you. Does the applicant also require design waivers?
Yes, and in the initial conversations with the DRC, it was our understanding that we may have been required to get some design waivers. On the most recent letter that we received, the October 27 letter, it did not appear that we would need those because they were sort of trumped by the variance that we were requesting. But we'd be glad to address those original design waivers that were mentioned as as being possibly necessary. Again, relating to offsets from the property line for the parking lot and landscape screening.
So, members of the board and Ms. Talley also, I'm not sure if, because your last review letter doesn't address any design waivers, is it fair to say that at this point, the township doesn't feel they're necessary? Because I don't want to use too much board time here to go through the waivers and the burdens of proof if the township is not insisting on design waivers.
Those design waivers had to do with the landscaping and the 4 foot, the minimum 4 foot required landscape strip between a parking area and the property line, which are basically subsumed within the 10-foot setback requirement. So I think the board should be cognizant that, yes, there's a 10-foot setback requirement. There's also a 4 foot setback requirement for all parking lots that have to be landscaped. So we didn't emphasize the 4 foot because you already have the 10 foot.
Okay, that's fair to say. And the other one was, as you stated, it was 281-9F, which was needing to plant a landscape barrier. So we would of course agree that that's already included in the variance we're seeking. So
Right.
we'd be comfortable to move on if you're satisfied that no design waivers are needed. Okay, so then I have no other questions of Mr. Brown if there's no design waivers needed.
And may I just make one adjustment? Mr. Neese had mentioned or had asked me earlier about the date of my New Jersey licensure. It was a long process. It took me almost 14 months to achieve. The exact date that I received it on was November 29 of 2018. So I just wanted to correct that for the record. And yeah, I apologize for that. I was trying to go off the top of my head, and that doesn't always work.
Well, Mr. Brown, I'm going to hold you to that date, okay?
Fair enough.
Okay.
So does the board have any questions for Mr. Brown?
I do have a couple, and as somebody who's gone through the process of getting a license in New Jersey, I understand how long it can be sometimes, Mr. Brown, so I get it. So when you put this plan together, did it change any of the existing parking count? I mean, we heard from Mr. Williams that there's 51 parking spaces. Is that what's there currently? Is that what there will be when this, if this change is approved?
Yes, that is correct. And in fact, on C101, if Ms. Talley were to flip back one sheet, we did highlight that under our parking summary that we're not changing the number of stalls. As you mentioned, and as Mr. Williams mentioned, there are, yes, right there. There are existing 51 stalls and there are proposed 51 stalls. So the only change to the parking really was just the angle of the ADA stalls to allow easier access and circulation and better demarcation of the access aisles.
Okay. And you also mentioned, you talked a little bit about, what would the parking lot look like if there was a 10-foot setback, if the, zoning requirements were met. Have you done any analysis of, approximately the number of parking spaces that would be lost if that were,
Yes.
if you were to follow that ordinance?
Yes, and a conservative estimate would be between 15 and 20. It really just depends how we would have to lay out the parking lot interior landscaping, because that would have to be all readjusted. But a conservative estimate would be between 15 to 20 stalls.
But
Okay,
Mr.
how many
Brown-
parking spaces?
Lost.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, that was it. I was just saying, I'm sorry, 15 to 20 stalls approximately would be lost.
Okay, and how many are required for the house of worship?
Yeah, so the parking ratio for House of Worship is 1 stall per 8 seats of, and we understand that to be primary seating seats, which have a primary view of the stage. So there's currently 344 seats with primary seating that have view of the stages in the auditorium. So that would mean a minimum of 43 required stalls. So again, I'm sure you're doing the math just like I did. If you were to subtract, that minimum of 15 stalls from the 51, you'd be at around 36, which would be non-compliant.
Okay, and you said 344 seats that can view the main stage. Does that mean there's other seats there?
Yeah, the layout, it may include a room that's used maybe as an office or something like that. It's not used for the actual assembly usage during the meetings. So since the stalls are used by congregants that are coming to attend the meetings that are held throughout the week, that's how we would understand the parking ratio to apply to.
Okay, is that Janice? Is that how the parking works for kind of an office type of area?
No, but I believe with houses of worship, it's based on the size of the sanctuary.
Okay, so that's the only requirement.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Brown, your neighbor across the street mentioned something about the trees. Are those remaining with this work?
Yes, so the trees are not, there's a landscape screening or hedge, a perimeter hedge, which is indicated by those like dark circles over top of the gray ones along Orange Road. And so those are, approximately, 6-foot high shrubs that provide visual screening from the parking lot. And we're not planning to eliminate that. The fence is actually going on the inside, so we're actually willing to put the fence over the edge of our parking lot so that we can preserve that existing screening. And where those plants have died or are dying, we're going to replace that. So that screening will actually at the end will be even more intact than it currently is.
Okay, so in this view that we have here, figure 5 from Ms. Talley's October 27th report, those kind of what look like kind of dead or dying hedges, those are going to be replaced?
Yes.
Okay. And then also on the screen, there's some orange paint on the sidewalk, presumably indicating, some uneven sidewalks. Is the applicant going to do anything about that?
Yes. So we've already been in talks with Essex County, who owns the street trees, which are directly adjacent to that on the left side of the page. They're actually, the roots of those trees are actually the reason why the sidewalk is lifting. So they have agreed to, cut those roots back so that we can repair the sidewalk. And the applicant is already fielding contractors to perform that work.
Okay, so we could make that a condition of the approval if it goes that way?
Is that to me or Ms. Talley?
Up to you, Mr. Brown.
Oh, yeah, we're willing. They are certainly going to perform that work. So sure, however you'd like to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Brown, do you have a letter from the county? Because when I spoke to the county, they had no idea. I raised this very issue with them.
Yes, and maybe Ms. Onifrak could address that. She's been in communication with them.
Yeah, I do have a letter from the county council stating that they have extended the offer to come and send their shade tree commission out to shave the roots back, provided that the congregation removes the slabs or lifts the slabs, and they will address the root situation, and then the new slabs can be put on top.
Okay, if you could send that to me because
Sure, absolutely.
If you could send that to me as well. Well, Janice, you can send it to me. That's going to be part of the record of this case.
Okay. It's an email. It's not a formal letter, but I'm happy to share it.
Are you capable of doing that now, Ms. Onifrak?
I can try to.
Let's see how
I'll just use my
technologically
phone.
proficient you are.
Yeah, I'll use my phone to find it. I don't know if you have any other questions for Mr. Brown in the meantime.
Well, I was just going to ask Mr. Brown if he had a chance to look at Ms. Talley's October 27th letter and if he could address the points listed under planning considerations if he has reviewed that letter.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So on page 9 of the October 27 letter, we have the first point mentioning that some of the required landscape buffer is in the right of way. That's the main point. And as we addressed in our discussion, we feel that trying to put another buffer next to the existing landscape buffer, which would also require us to chop off some 10, several feet of our existing parking lot isn't really a feasible option at the moment. So what we've agreed to do and are glad to do is to make sure that that existing landscape buffer is all the plantings there are intact. Any that are dead or dying can be replaced. And so we feel like providing the screening that's required, even though some of it is in the right of way, it has been that way for decades. We would like to request, through the variance that we did request and then provide justification for, that we can continue to utilize that existing landscaping there and improve upon it to meet the requirement, or at least the intent of that zoning ordinance. Number two is along the same lines, explaining that the existing landscape buffer along Orange Road is sparse and in poor condition. We will be replacing those existing bushes, but one of the notes is that that there are 10 new Silver King euonymus bushes that were proposed, and it's not a native plant, so we were requested to provide an alternative evergreen plant, and we're glad to do that. So we can certainly look into an alternative and provide a revised planting on the landscape plan for that.
Okay, and I can tell you from personal experience, the Silver King euonymus are loved by deer. So something that's native and deer resistant are probably going to be much easier to maintain for you all.
Thank you. Yeah. We also have number 3 along the same lines. There are areas in the landscape buffer along the southern property line where the bushes have died. 3 Silver King euonymus bushes and 4 new Spartan juniper bushes are proposed to replace the dead arbor vitae along Orange Road West frontage, and it's recommended that only Spartan juniper bushes be planted along the southern property line to maintain consistency in the landscape screening of the parking lot. So again, we'll be glad glad to make that adjustment in the plan, and we can provide a revised landscape plan to address that. So those 3 Silver King will now become Spartan junipers. Point number 4, the original plan, it mentions, which is attached, included several trees in the landscaped areas interior to the parking lot. The landscaping plan should include trees and plantings in these interior areas. The applicant proposed the addition of 3 variegated dwarf weigela and 3 mountain hydrangea in the landscaped areas in the interior of the parking lot. So I just wanted to understand that comment specifically. Is the board asking for a more substantial planting? I mean, we do have to work with the sort of the geometry and the dimensions of that planting area, and also trying to make sure that we don't impact the existing or adjacent pavement as well. So were the plantings that were proposed, were those viewed as insufficient?
I think that was really just an observation. There
Okay.
really was no recommendation in that comment.
Okay. We will maintain them as they are currently on the landscaping plan. The last comment is number 5, which is specifically the sidewalk issue that you raised, Mr. Brodock. So that will be taken care of, and again, we'll be glad to include that as view that as a condition of our approval. It may even be done by the time the other work begins.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Other questions from the board?
Good question, Keith.
Okay, if there are no questions from the
I have a
board.
question, Keith.
Oh, Ms. Lockman.
Yeah. Can you please refer to page 7 of Janice's planning memo? And I specifically would, I'd like to look at figure 10 that's the figure. So the DRC, when we met, we recommended some kind of plantings in front of that building to give it some aesthetic appeal, whether they be planters or in the ground. That's just asphalt there, and it looks kind of unattractive. So since you were doing a landscape plan, we thought that would be a good spot to beautify. Was there any consideration given to that recommendation of the DRC?
Yeah, so there currently is a landscape planter there. It's partially, you can kind of see it there in the against that the existing wood fence, which is going to go away. You know, we would be glad to increase or at least as needed to tend to those plantings, which you may have waned a little bit in the time during which we were not actually using the Kingdom Hall for meetings. But it just, there would be an additional sort of diminution of the asphalt. We'd have to sort of tear out that asphalt, and then in order to add additional plantings there, we're currently putting the fence at our property line so as to protect our property to the best of our ability. So it didn't really appear to be the most feasible location to add additional landscaping, just because of the sort of the desire to protect the property and to put that fence as close to the property line as possible. But you won't be seeing those areas that you see now as sort of what you're seeing there. Obviously, the trash cans are out for trash day, but typically those are behind the stone wall, which is there for aesthetic purposes. And now you'll also have an additional 6-foot powder-coated aluminum fence that will also obscure some of that. And all that fencing, the wood fencing and chain link fencing that is there that's currently encroaching on our property will basically be removed and cleaned up. So we hope that the end result will be a much cleaner and much better than it was when we found it at this point.
I mean, I agree with you what you're planning to do with the section on the left, let's just call it, where the wooden fence is and all that. But right in front of the sign there, the green sign, you're going to put a fence up there, but it's still going to have this asphalt behind it. Is there any way you could put up some planters and beautify it a little bit? I mean, now you're just going to have a fence that'll run straight across there. You could put planters, I mean, just, those oak barrel things or something. Just something to make it a little bit more attractive, because it's just this blank wall. And that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. I do believe, if I understand correctly, that adjacent area, is that another parking lot? Is that right? Is that a public parking lot there?
That's the that's Bobby Schleifer's business, isn't it?
Sort of out of the page, if you were to kind of look at the foreground.
That's a strip of parking, yeah.
Okay.
You mean this area?
Yes.
That's a street. It's where the street meets the parking lot, so it's a travel way.
It is a travel way with parking on the western part of it.
Yeah, I think that's it's a drive aisle between the sidewalk and the car park, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand sort of what was the adjacent area, so we can put our landscaping where it'll do the most, the most good.
Yeah, I'd just like you to consider putting some plantings there to, it is a strip where people walk to go to those stores, and it would be nice if it was enhanced in some way. And that was presented at the DRC as well.
Yes, I think we can look at maybe putting some more planters, but again, it would probably have to be on the inside of the fence. So, if that's acceptable, I think the congregation would be willing to do that to the degree that they can, since there is an egress door. But I think there could be some plantings that could be added you know, in maybe a potted sort of fashion on the inside of the fence, if that would help break it up a little bit.
Yep. And how do you know, the fence runs all across without a gate? Is that true in that area? So that's an egress door, and where do people get out onto the street from there?
So there will be a pedestrian gate. The egress is from the building, but then there's a pedestrian gate sort of at the
Here?
west corner of the building. Yeah.
There?
Maybe you can put your mouse there again, Janice. Yeah, thank you.
Try and,
Thank you.
it looks right here. That's the pedestrian
Yes.
gate.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how does somebody get out of that gate? I mean, is that like a push bar that somebody can get out in an emergency?
So that gate would typically, you know, it depends on when the you know, what time of day, but certainly the residents would be, you know, would be able to you know, would have a key for being able to access that, and we would meet any code requirements for, you know, emergency egress, whatever they may be.
Or fire? How do the firemen get in if there were a fire in that wooden building?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the code requires. I mean, I just wouldn't want to see somebody, you know, in a panic trying to leave, especially if two residents, you know, not be able to get off the property in an emergency because they don't know where the key is, or, you know, frankly, if there's a fire in the building, wouldn't want to spend the time trying to find the key. So just allowing them safe egress from the entire property, you know, in an emergency. Yeah, please look into that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Okay, questions from the public. Ms. Talley will unmute everybody in the public. If you have a question, feel free to just start with your question. You know, if you could start with your name and address, that would be good, and then your question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Mary. I live at 335 Orange Road. I also own 331 Orange Road, directly across the street. I was just curious about the type of fence. If you could put that up on the screen and let us know what type of fence they would be putting up, that would also be helpful. I know you said aluminum powder coated, but there's different variations of that type of fence.
Yeah, what you're seeing there is the you know, is the basically an approximate representation of what the fence will look like when installed.
So is the how wide are the slats then?
The distance between the two pickets, the 3 and
Yes.
3 and 31/32 inches, just less than 4.
Okay, and I'm just curious as to why a 6-foot fence is chosen.
Yeah, it is a, you know, it is a perimeter fence that's there for security. So that is why that height has been chosen, and it's one that's supported by the use for this property in the zoning code.
Hello, this is Michael Forte. I'm the managing partner of Forte International. We manage the properties at 328, 324, and 322 Orange Road. With respect to the fence and the ordinance that was quoted, is this considered a corner lot because it does have two roads that intersect and form a corner? And if so, can you explain how the fence would be permitted to be 6 feet high all the way around?
Sure. Yeah. So the code essentially says that for a corner lot, it just can't encroach upon the triangular area that's created by the intersection of the two roads with a 25-foot setback. So that was actually commented on the first DRC letter, and we incorporated that into our design even before that was requested. So that's the ordinance 34727E. So we are compliant with that.
Thank you.
Sure.
If I could just make, I guess it's more of a comment. This is, again, Mary Forte from 331 Orange Road and 335 Orange Road.
Well,
I guess,
Mary, there will be a moment in probably about 5 to 10 minutes where you can make a comment about the application as a whole, but for right now, we're just taking questions from Mr. Brown about his testimony.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions for Mr. Brown from the public? Okay.
Okay, no more questions.
Can I wrap up then?
Please.
Okay, so tonight we've heard through testimony that the applicant is seeking approval to install the fence, improve the landscaping, and make some minor adjustments to that ADA parking area striping. Mr. Brown, applicant's engineer, testified that the hardship variance criteria, the positive and negative criteria, has been met. And therefore, since the burden of proof has been made and up to the board, but we hope that you will be granting the application. So we respectfully request that the variance be granted, as well as any other relief that the board deems appropriate, and also that the board grant preliminary and final minor site plan approval so that the applicant can proceed with this beautification project. In conclusion, I would like to thank all of you for your time and your consideration of this application, and I also would like to move all the exhibits into evidence.
Okay. Before we get to board deliberations, are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment about this application overall?
Okay.
This is Michael Forte again. With respect to the fence itself, and I think the stated purpose was for security. However, in the adjacent neighboring properties, there are no 6-foot tall fences. And one of the neighbors, in fact, across the way where there's a assisted living facility, for instance, doesn't have a fence. This site in question has never had a fence. And by installing such a high fence, it is really putting an eyesore in the neighborhood. And this fence in particular is bordered, as was already stated, by 2 major roads, Orange Road and Orange Road West. And so putting this up, I'm not, certain that I've heard enough about what exactly, is being protected or secured. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 incidents, but it wasn't clear to me that this fence would prevent things like that from happening. And I don't see that the benefits necessarily outweigh, the harm and detriment to the neighborhood of installing such a commercial-looking security fence in an area that's bordered by primarily residences.
Other comments from the public? Mary?
Yes, I'm sorry. Just to piggyback on what Michael said, I know the Jehovah Witness Center feels that they're part of the neighborhood. However, I'm here 12 years, or is it more? Around 12 years, let's say. They are not part of the neighborhood. They do not participate in any activities that go down in the south end. So you have this building that's a kind of commercial building. It looks sort of like an eyesore. And then you're now building this very tall fence around it, and it's just really not appealing to the neighborhood. at all. A 4-foot fence I can understand. A 6-foot fence I don't agree with.
Other comments from the public? Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, yes, it's Sophia from 339 again. I would like to agree with a previous comment and just say that if the intention is to ensure that people don't trespass and that it's secure, I think that a 4-foot fence would accomplish that. There's no need to have a 6-foot fence. Also, as far as fencing goes, there is a huge variety in what constitutes a fence. I just Googled aluminum fence and there was a whole different variety of how things could be. So is there a way we could see what the fence actually looks like before they install it? Because that would make a difference in, I think, a lot of people's opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. There are, it sounds like you're calling in by phone. If you are either watching us on TV 34 or on YouTube, a depiction of the fence, a diagram of the fence is up on the screen at the moment. If that's helpful, there's also, if you're on the township website, there's an ability to download the plans if you go to the planning department. So there's examples of the fence there. I don't know if I heard Mr. Brown, what color would the fence be?
It's a powder coated black.
Black, okay.
What does powder coated mean?
It's just a way of chemically adhering the paint to the substrate, to the metal, so that it's durable. It just looks like black paint.
Can I have a question? So aren't most of the bushes that you're installing going to be 6 feet? So wouldn't the fence be behind the bushes and hardly even visible? Isn't that the idea?
I would agree that yeah, as you currently see, and as even on other parts of the property, they already are at 6 feet or around that height. So we do believe that, yeah, there's a perfect example that the visual impact, you know, of the fence would be limited. You know, we are concerned about some of the incidences that have occurred at the property, and it is regularly used as a pass-through. You know, there's no doubt that vehicles are driving through the property on a regular basis, as well as individuals entering on foot. So, you know, certainly a fence with a gate can help prevent the vehicles. A 4-foot fence, you know, for a 6-foot person like myself, like if I really want to get over a 4-foot fence, it's really not that hard. And so just, you know, trying to be as responsible as we can for the people that live there and to protect the you know, the property that, again, that has been there for many years. That is why we proposed a fence that would meet that. It will be well maintained. Again, the landscaping will help to soften that. That is a big part of the application that we intend to follow through with and to maintain and to care for. You know, if you go on Google Street View, I can see a 6-foot fence right next door to the property, and it's chain link. It's not as nice as the polished aluminum fence that we're going to put up. So we really, you know, we don't want to have a negative visual impact on the community, and we're trying to balance those two concerns. You know, having as little visual impact, but while still providing the security for the property that we feel is necessary.
I mean, could we have a condition that any new plantings have to be 6 feet? You know, so that you're planting mature bushes, you're not just planting little things. Is that in your plan already?
I believe on our landscaping plan, our Silver King euonymus is a 6-foot height planting. So that's going to be replaced by probably a similar planting that's also evergreen, but it will still acquire the same height.
it'll be the same height when you plant it, not growing to that height.
Planting size would be a minimum of 4 feet. That's how it's currently stated, but it would be maintained at a height of 6 feet.
Just real quick, I keep hearing security, security, security. If you know you've been open, or the church has been established since the 81, I believe, there will be some incidents that occur. I mean, but when was the last major incident that make you guys so heavy on security at this point?
Cliff, who's
That might be
Lieutenant
a
Slocum?
question for Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
Just prior to COVID, prior to we not using the building for COVID, we had the incident that I mentioned in testimony concerning the individuals who climbed on his car, took pictures, and then kicked the building.
So
Wasn't-
this is my.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was just
Please
gonna ask Mr. Williams, I thought there was, on one of the occasions, there was like a loud pop outside the window as well that the residents recalled hearing.
Yeah, that's the incident I'm speaking to. It was really not completely deduced what was the reason for the noise. It brought the resident outside. It appears that he may have run up and kicked the building, but it was inconclusive between a loud pop or him kicking the building. Yes, you are right about that.
And what is the building? I'm assuming it's made of cement. Like, how is there a pop when I'm kicking the building?
As I mentioned, as far as the pop was concerned, it wasn't inclusive of what actually was there a pop. It was he mentioned, the resident mentioned that he thought he heard a pop. With the video camera, we were able to see that he at least at minimum appeared to have struck the building with his foot, possibly.
And the building's not made of cement, right, Mr. Williams? It's wooden structure?
Yes, it is. It's a wooden structure.
So it's a wooden structure thin enough where if I kick it, you can hear it on the inside.
Well, it's an apartment, it's a wall. It's an exterior wall to an apartment. So if you kick that wall, the person sitting right on the other side of that wall will probably most likely be able to hear you a little bit.
Okay. I'm just, I mean, I just had a couple questions. I've been a police officer here in Montclair for 13 years, and I haven't been there too many times, but, maybe there's some stuff that I might have missed during that time.
No, that was the last, but we appreciate you guys, and we appreciate you coming when we call.
You keep talking about residents. It's 2 people that live there?
Yes. A couple, yes.
Okay. Now with the changing of this fence and shrubbery, what about sight lines at turns on the corners? Are the sight lines going to change at all with this? It's very hard to, the photos or what I'm looking at are these fences are basically black and white lines. It's to me, it doesn't look like a fence in these drawings. It's just black and white lines. So is it solid? Are the sight lines going to change at the corners? That's really pretty important.
I could respond to that. And yeah, thank you for your question. So if you sort of look at the bottom left corner of this page, and you see the location of the existing shrubbery, which is denoted by those sort of little gray circles.
Mm-hmm.
So the fence will be inside of that. Yeah. So the existing landscaping is already opaque because by virtue of it being so thick and a landscape screening. So the fence will be on the inside of that. So the sight lines will not change. However, because we want to comply with the code, we are providing a fence that is meets the criteria for open. So it'll be nearly 4 inches between the small aluminum pickets. So it will it'll allow light to penetrate through the fence.
But they are black, they're black slats.
Yes.
And how wide is each picket, Mr. Brown?
They are 3/4 inches.
Okay, so it's 3/4 inches, and then what was the spacing in between the pickets?
Just below 4 inches.
Okay, so roughly 3/4 and then for a space of 3/4 solid, 4 inches approximately open, another 3/4 solid, and so on all the way down. And that's the same for the fence and the gates.
Yes, and that 4 inches is actually it's a result. It's a safety precaution because if you can't exceed 4 inches, otherwise you could have a small child, stick their head through it. So that 4 inches is actually it's for the safety of of children and not getting limbs and heads stuck in between the pickets. So that's where that number comes from. But yes, that's the same for the fence and the gates.
Okay. Were there any other comments from the public?
Yes, I'm looking at the diagram of the fence. 2 comments. Well, first, what is this diagonal cross that I see on the fence? So there's the vertical, and then there's like periodically there's these crosses. Yep, there we go. So what is that? That's question number 1.
Sure. So the detail 4 is what the fence will be along the majority of the perimeter. What you're seeing there at 5 and 6 are gates. So the gates have to have those structural diagonal members in order to keep the fence from sagging and getting bent out of shape. But the fence that will be around the perimeter will be what you see there in detail 4, which is at the far left of the page. Detail 5 is a sliding gate that will be at the west driveway entrance, and then detail 6 is a swinging double gate at the east entrance.
Okay. And just a comment. So I appreciate that there's some effort in trying to make this attractive with flowers and the bushes and the trees, and I appreciate that. But as far as the fence goes, I can tell by the description you just gave me that this is going to be a relatively cheaper looking fence. And for a perimeter such as the Jehovah's Witness Church, this is going to stretch for a very long time. And it's going to be just this really big, unattractive, cheap-looking fence. Is there any other options possibly for the fence design? Because regardless of how many trees you put in, people are still going to be able to see the fence, both from the gate and in between the trees. Thank you.
Could we just ask what member of the public was speaking just now, please, for the record?
Sophia, I live across the Jehovah's Witness Church, 339 Orange Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, and we appreciate the concern because obviously, you live in the neighborhood and you don't want to have an eyesore. And again, that's not the intention. There are definitely cheap fences that could be built. You could do a chain link fence. An aluminum fence is generally considered an aesthetic design because you do have the vertical pickets and it isn't sort of a it's not a bottom of the barrel choice. And if you talk to the local congregants and the cost of the fence, there are definitely cheaper options they could have chosen, but they chose this one because they felt that it did have an aesthetic value and they wanted it to try and provide the security that they had hoped for, but while still maintaining as inviting as possible an atmosphere. And again, at the spots where you do have no landscaping, which are typically at the driveways, again, we got a nice double swinging gate, which does have some architectural elements to it. And we're trying to really provide something that, again, it's going to be primarily screened by the landscaping anyway, but where it is visible, we're trying to provide a product that will not detract from the overall look of the community.
Any other?
This is
go ahead,
Michael Forte again. So with respect to, I guess I'm not sufficiently moved by the rationale between a 4-foot and a 6-foot fence. Specifically, I'm trying to figure out what that extra 2 feet gives you. If you go back to the picture that you had up before of the entrance to the Kingdom Halls parking lot, the masonry pillars that you have out front, it's my understanding that they're less than 6 feet. And so what would it, those pillars there. So the fence, and correct me if I'm wrong, but those pillars, I believe, are less than 6 feet, which would indicate to me that the fence that you're proposing is actually going to be taller than the pillars, and presumably the hedges when they're trimmed properly. So what we're talking about doing is actually changing the landscaping. It sounds like we're putting a fence up that's going to be behind the hedges, and this is the reason why there's such concern over the 4 foot versus the 6 foot. Those pillars, I believe, are closer to 4 foot, 4.5 feet. And so I guess I need to understand what added security comes from those 2 additional feet, such that if I wanted to come and jump over the fence, you indicated that it would be easy for you to jump over a 4 foot fence, but perhaps I just bring a milk crate or a 5-gallon bucket with me and I just step over the 6 foot fence. Maybe it's better to build an 8 foot fence or a 16 foot fence, but I guess I'm not moved here by the extra 2 feet because it definitely will change the landscape. And when it changes the landscape, I think that's what the major concern is. The reason, again, for the fence that I've heard is somebody jumped on a car and somebody kicked the building, which I'm not sure exactly how much it cost, that may have caused to the congregation, but I gotta imagine that this fence around the entire perimeter, especially with a sliding gate, is a significant cost.
Thank you, Mr. Forte. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we will close the hearing. Members of the board, what do you all think about this?
I'd like some clarifications, Tony.
Sure.
My understanding is that no variance is required for the fence. The variance applies to the setback of parking, correct? So I'll ask Janice this. I mean, the report says the 6 foot fence is allowed by zoning.
That's correct.
Okay, so there has been a lot of discussion about the fence, but it is allowable by code, right?
That's correct.
And okay, so the variance that the board would be looking at would be, for example, just in that photo, those parking spaces are too close to the perimeter. Is that the variance?
Right. It's 10 feet for the NC zone, 4 feet elsewhere in our zoning ordinance, but we always require a setback for the parking area must be set back from the property line.
Did we hear why it might be a hardship to set those parking spaces back? Did we hear testimony on that?
Yes.
Okay.
They'd lose
I'm sorry,
15,
I missed it.
Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd lose 15 spots, Tony, if they did
Okay,
that.
thank you. No, I got, that's all I got.
So why are we hearing about the fence? It's a moot point?
No, because there's a variance for the setback. The previous site plan that was approved that I have on file showed that the parking was set back from the property line. It wasn't set back 10 feet, but it was set back closer to the 4 foot. So that's what triggered this variance, this application.
Okay. And so are we not required then to see an actual photo of the fence at this time? Does it matter then what fence they put up? I mean, the actual fabrication of a fence?
Well, okay, they do, no matter what, they do require minor site plan to install the fence, even if there's no variance for the fence.
Okay. Okay.
No. It's at your discretion if you want to see a photo of the fence other than an elevation.
Well, then that's what I would like to say, is that I would like to see an actual photo of the fence. Seeing the drawn lines, that are meaningless to me. And I really feel for the neighbors who have spoken here this evening, who live there and see this fence and the building every day. Their discussion of a 4-foot versus a 6-foot, you know, I take that very seriously for them. And, but I understand the security situation for the church, but, I also think of lots of other churches around town, including the one that I go to. There are no fences, but they're open. I can't think of one house of worship that has a fence. Even, so, I would like to see a photo of the actual fence. So that's.
Can I actually just
That's what
clarify
I'd
something?
like
I know,
to say.
I know part of the reason why the security concerns are that 2 individuals are living in the house of worship. There are no code issues with that, with individuals living on site?
It's a good question. That's why I kept asking if there are only 2.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Are there any code concerns with that, Arthur or Janice?
I can't answer that at this point because I wasn't even aware anybody was living there.
Yeah.
But if
Constantly
you take a look
mentioned
at-
that was the basis of their security concerns because
Yeah.
people are living there.
Right.
If I may, if you look through the planning documents and there was a renovation to the building, and Mr. Williams can probably tell me what year it was, but one of the purposes of the renovation was to include that apartment. So that was approved at the time for
Okay.
missionaries and traveling overseers. And I want to say that maybe it was in 2000,
Correct.
but that was approved and that was done per code. And I think that they also testified that there was more than just that one incident. I mean, this is a corner lot where
Sure.
people pass through.
Oh, no,
And-
absolutely. I just want clarity to make sure that there's no other issue we need to address.
And if
then-
I may, just as with the safety issues, we mentioned it too because I mentioned too as a person trying to be relevant, but over the years, there have been many incidences that we've had in the parking lot itself with car theft and other things. We've also had instances where we've been of help to Montclair in trying to find people who've cut through the lot, hid behind cars and things. So there are some things that we have absorbed for a long, long time. And we're just interested in a little bit of safety, not trying to be overbearing or trying to do anything that would bring blight to the community or our neighbors. Just some safety and to the building. That's all.
Oh, absolutely, Mr. Williams. Question, would the congregation consider a 4-foot fence? You're permitted under the code to do 6. I'm just wondering if there was discussion or if there would be a consideration to do a 4-foot version.
I think that'd probably be a better question for the engineer of record because that design was what was submitted.
Well, I think it would probably be a preference of the congregation at this point. I'm assuming that it could be scaled down to be 4 foot. But I am sympathetic to both parties in this instance, the neighbors who are concerned about the scale of the fence and also members of the congregation who are concerned about protecting, their property and the 2 individuals staying there. I'm wondering if the congregation would be open to a 4-foot fence.
I could just like to add, I live on a corner lot and I have a 4-foot aluminum fence around my house. And it's no problem whatsoever for a lithe young teenager to jump over that fence. So I am sympathetic to having a higher fence if they're indeed are concerned about security. And I believe that the fence, since it's more or less hidden by all the bushes, you're not really seeing the fence so much, you're seeing the greenery. And they've committed to having larger bushes planted to replace the ones that are dying. So I'm generally usually very sympathetic to neighbors, but in this instance, I don't see the concern. I know you're going to have the gates, and whether they're 4-foot gates or 6-foot gates, they're gates and they look prison-like perhaps, but that's what they want. And this is, they feel it's necessary with the instances that they've had. So I would support this application.
And just for one quick issue for clarity, it goes around the entire building as well, the fence based on the drawing, or did I misread that?
It goes around the whole thing.
The whole thing, right?
It's
That's the other thing, Carmel, because
it's
the
3
bushes will keep it
signs.
hidden, but there is a substantial portion that will be exposed.
So
Yeah,
I mean, I got a,
Yeah.
there was mention of community a lot too. So are you inclusive with the community, or you're concerned with people cutting through this parking lot? I'm a little confused. So we keep saying there's people that cut through. I mean, that area, that business area, typically people walk around and they shop. I lived in the South End most of my life here in Montclair. I went through all the public schools. I've cut through that lot, not with ill intentions. I've walked through and cut through the lot and visited stores in the back when there used to be Woods ice cream back there. So, I mean, we're talking community, but it sounded like now you want to block them out. Like cutting through a parking lot is not a crime.
Wow.
So like there's two questions there. One, does the fence go all the way around? And let's start with that with Mr. Brown, and then if Mr. Williams wants to address Mr. Cook's question about blocking out the community.
Yeah, so thank you for putting up the site plan. So the fence does go around basically
Thought so, yeah.
3/4 of the property. On the backside, where there is the adjacent residential and commercial lot, we didn't put an extra burden by adding a fence around that property line, although we could have based on where our property line is, but we decided to terminate it at the northwest corner of the building to basically limit it to where we felt it really did the most good. So, safety is subjective, and a person who owns a property typically wants to provide what they feel is necessary to maintain that property for the use that it was designed for, and also to protect it from any potential damage. So that's sort of the genesis of this, and again, that's why we settled on the design that we did to try to accomplish that purpose, but again, to do it as aesthetically as possible. And again, we are committed to maintaining the landscaping to prevent, to minimize the impact that the fence would have visually to the surrounding properties. And that's something that, I think we've stated very clearly, and we're glad to put on the record.
And for Mr. Cook, I believe your name, Ricky. As I mentioned, it is not our purpose to keep the public away from our place of worship. There's something that we love to do, is engage our neighbors and anyone in the opportunity to worship. However, I'll give you a scenario. One evening, we had a person cut through the parking lot at a very high rate of speed when someone was leaving, when young ones and adults were leaving the congregation meetings. Now, this was at night. He was not a congregant, and he actually tooted the horn at us to get out the way, to get out of his way, cutting through what would be a private property. And this happens very often. It's not once or twice, but it happens very often. So it's not, even though we highlight it just to be pragmatic and not be overbearing, a couple of local instances, there is a great deal of tribulation that comes through with people cutting through the lot, using the awnings in the lot to smoke marijuana. We find nips and all kind of things in the property. People walk along the property at any time they want to. Kids skateboard in there. There's a lot of things that we have concern for safety for ourselves and also for the community also, because someone cutting through may get hit by someone cutting through.
I understand that. Quick question, Mr. Williams. What's the last community event that everyone in the South End was a part of that you guys held?
Well, the last community event that we were, you're asking as members or individual persons? Because I myself.
Well, I mean, you're saying community. I just want to know the last event
Sure.
that
So,
the whole South End Business District community was a part of.
Well, the last one, in talking with Z, I think she mentioned that they had the pop-up shop. And then I did miss going to something that she had called me about because I wasn't able to make it. But we are in contact with the South End Building Committee. I am personally. And for things that I'm available or other members of the congregation to which to patronage or go to personally, they do. There are many persons who live in Montclair at the time, right in that neighborhood. And we try to do our best to be a part of what's happening in the South End.
I understand that. So I guess my question is, when a lot of other people like the pop-up shop, that was held at their specific business, has there anything that's been held where the congregation is, or your building used strictly for your members?
Right. Do you serve meals there or have a, you know, do you do anything like that?
Well, we've hosted disaster relief classes there. We've hosted other safety classes that people leave from there and go out and do in their communities and places where they work. And like I said, we patronage the South End a great deal.
So aren't your meetings open to anyone who wants to come? You're not a
They are.
closed community. Anybody can come to your meetings from the community if they want to. So it's not like you're closed off and only open to members.
I mean, how are you supposed to know that, Ms. Lockman? I mean, do they publicize it?
I don't know. Do they?
I don't know. I never even knew they were there.
There's a lot of the Jehovah's come to my house all the time. The witnesses, I should say. So I feel like they are part of the community. The same people come and visit and leave their pamphlet with me, and we talk. So
I live right around the corner on Virginia Avenue. I haven't seen one yet.
Yeah, me neither.
But I mean, I think it's beyond the point that we're here for. So I'm not going to hold everyone up. I think I just said what I wanted to say.
Rick, I'd like to also, we had an opportunity to be assistance to the neighbor at 331 here recently, right across the street. She had her parents were traveling and they were pretty, plans got all messed up and they needed to be able to find some relief for a U-Haul van and they weren't able to do it. They called. We've had other persons who called and needed assistance where we were able to help. Often witnesses help personally. So we've been able to be of some assistance to some in the neighborhood directly and help them with things.
Great, thank you.
Other discussion from the board members? I'll give you my take is that the fence I think would mostly be screened by the landscaping, and that the landscaping really is primarily what's going to be seen. And I appreciate that the applicant is willing to replant bushes that are outside of the even their property where they have traditionally installed landscaping and maintain the landscaping to some degree. Certainly it's fallen into some I guess disrepair of the current landscaping, but they're willing to replace it. And I think with replacing that, it's going to go a long way to mitigating the visual impacts of the fence that's going to be installed. The gates I think are just going to end up looking like gates. I'm not sure if those are going to provide the total amount of security. If the gates are open and the congregants are there, people can still cut through. I'm not sure if the gates are really going to help that. But if that's what the applicant feels is going to be helpful for them, then I think it looks fine to me. And I think with having a 10-foot setback and the loss of 10 to 15 parking stalls, it does then become deficient. And we know that parking in general, although I've always had I haven't had troubles parking down in the South End, so maybe parking is less of an issue in that area than in some other areas in Montclair. But I think our general preference is to keep the parking on site to the extent that we can, and in which case I would also support this application.
I agree, Vice Chair, and I think, ultimately, the fence is permitted under the code. We're really discussing whether we need to make adjustments to the parking, and I think it would not be advisable to reduce the space by 15 usable parking spaces. So I think ultimately it weights in favor of approval, in my opinion.
In that case,
I'm
I
also
would,
in agreement. The fence is allowed, and at capacity, 15 extra cars on the streets is not a good thing. So I think that the loss of 15 is significant to justify the variance for the parking.
I think in that case, I would make a motion to approve the application with the conditions that we've heard tonight. Mr. Neese, do you happen to have a list of all those?
I actually think I do, Mr. Brodock. Before I get to them, I would like to make the board aware that Janice forwarded to me the email that had been forwarded to her by Ms. Onufrak, and it is an email dated October 29, 2021 from Courtney Gassione, who is the Essex County Counsel. And I'm not going to read the entire thing into the record unless the board really does want to hear it. It's several 3 or 4 paragraphs long, but it effectively says that, perhaps I'll read the relevant portion. The county is quote, "The county is willing to assist with the remediation of the condition. If your client agrees to remove the impacted sidewalk pads, the county will address the tree root issue. Subsequent to the tree root remediation, your client would be responsible for the replacement of the pads." Then Ms. Gassione says, "Please advise if your client is amenable to this arrangement." So I guess, Ms. Onufrak, I presume that you responded in the affirmative, but I just want to make sure that that was in fact the case.
I have not yet responded because I've been waiting to make sure the congregation was willing, and I did hear from them in the last couple of days that they are moving forward and are willing to do this. So I am planning to respond to Ms. Gassione tomorrow.
So I will.
Forward.
So if the board approves this application, your affirmative response, meaning the applicant's response to this, it will be a condition of the approval, and you understand that.
Yes, of course.
So with that said, the conditions I was able to discern from the discussion of the board really revolves around Janice's memo dated October 27, 2021. In specifics, the planning considerations at page 9. And speaking with regard to those number 2 and 3, the applicant shall revise its landscaping plan to provide for, in the case of number 2, to provide for evergreen plantings, which will be New Jersey native evergreen plantings. And number 3, there was testimony from Mr. Brown that the applicant will make the adjustment that was indicated in number 3, and that will be a condition of the approval. And as we've just discussed, the repair of the sidewalk in terms that the county has agreed to assist the applicant with. And the last condition that I was able to discern is that the applicant will install planters in the asphalt area in the location shown on page 7 of Janice's report at the rear of that building, between the fence and the building, as discussed by Ms. Loftman.
I would just reference figure 10 on page 7.
Sorry, Karen, I didn't hear you, Carmel.
Reference figure 10 on page 7, because that's the
Figure 10, correct.
Okay, so that's the motion.
I'll second.
That's a second by Ms. Lockman? Yep, okay. Any discussion from the board? Ms. Talley, do you want to call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Brodock,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
No.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Ian Wally,
Yes.
Ms. Lockman,
Yes.
Counselor Schlager.
I'm going to vote no out of respect to the neighbors who have called in tonight, who have great concerns about the fence. So therefore I'm supporting them and I'm voting no.
Ms. Willis.
Yes.
And did I miss anybody? I think it was it. Okay,
So that carried, I believe.
it's approved.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. This was more extensive than I expected, but we appreciate your input and we do appreciate the community's information, and we'll do our best to address the concerns, of course, of the neighbors.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, before we get to our next application, which is 10 Elm Street, let's take a 5-minute break, come back around 9:35.
Okay.
let's get the show on the road and see how much we can get through.
Okay.
We're recording.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Nguyen and members of the board. Alan Tremulak, appearing on behalf of the applicant AD Holding 10 Elm Street 10 Elm Street Inc. This is an application for preliminary and final site plan approval involving the property located at 10 Elm Street. The property is located in the C1 Central Business District near the intersection of Elm Street and Bloomfield Avenue. The property currently contains a one-story commercial building with two tenants, the Smith Boring Auto Parts Store and Benderian Floor Coverings. My client is under contract to purchase the property contingent upon this board's approval of his proposed plan for the property. And that plan involves redevelopment of the property by removing the existing building and constructing a new 5-story mixed-use building containing 22 apartments and 1,100 square feet of office space. 4 of the 22 apartments would be designated as affordable units in compliance with the township's inclusionary zoning ordinance. The building would also contain 49 interior parking spaces, which is 1 space shy of the 50 spaces required under the zoning ordinance. As I noted, the property is in the Central Business District, and the building has been designed in compliance or in accordance with the requirements of the C1 zone. As this board knows, 6 stories are permitted in the Central Business District, and we're proposing a 5-story building, which is therefore compliant. The building envelope that we presented, with one exception, complies with all of these setback requirements in the zoning district. The proposed use is a permitted use in the zone, and the 22 dwelling units comply with the density limitations in the ordinance. In addition to site plan approval, we're seeking 3, I believe, minor variances. One, as I mentioned, we have 49 parking spaces, 50 spaces are required, so there's a variance for 1 parking space deficiency. We're proposing 4 tandem parking spaces, actually 8 spaces, but 4 of them are considered tandem, which requires a variance, and that seems to have already been endorsed by the board's parking expert. That would be the second variance, and the third variance would be a rear yard setback variance, which we'll explain as we go through the testimony. There's also several minor waivers that we're seeking. I have 3 professional witnesses to present in support of the application, namely Paul Sionis, who will discuss the architectural plans that his office prepared. And then we have Paul Anderson, our civil engineer, who will discuss the site plan, drainage, lighting plans. And Elizabeth Dolan, our traffic engineer, who will review the traffic impacts of the project, as well as the parking. Before I proceed with the witnesses, though, I would like to introduce the board to my client and present some brief testimony from Andre Dabachi, who I think is in the meeting. Andre, can you hear us? Uh-oh.
Yes.
Dabachi, I think is in the meeting.
Yeah, he is.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
Alan, before you begin, Janice, did you pre-mark any of the exhibits, and we can get those on the record?
Sure. A1 is the application. A2 is the certification of tax.
Before you begin, Janice, did you pre-mark any of the exhibits, and we can get those on the record?
Yes. Can you hear me? A2 is.
I think the applicant's got the live broadcast going, so it seems like there's a delay coming back through. Mr. Dabachi, if you don't mind muting yourself just momentarily and perhaps even turning down the simulcast, that would be helpful.
Either that or Arthur's learned how to talk without moving his lips.
Hearing myself once is enough, okay?
I'll start again. A1 is the application. A2 is the certification of taxes paid. A3 is the certification of publication. A4 is the affidavit of service. A5 is the survey. A6 is the site plan prepared by Anderson Consulting Services dated November 8th, 2021. A7 is the architectural drawings prepared by Sionis Architecture dated November 2nd, 2021. A8 is the traffic and parking study prepared by Dolan and Dean dated November 3rd, 2021. A9 is the drainage report prepared by Anderson Consulting Service dated June 14th, 2021. A10 is the planning report dated November 15th. A11 is the traffic report dated November 12th, 2021. A12 is the report from the Montclair Environmental Commission dated September 15th, 2021. A13 is the report from Suburban Consulting Engineers dated July 28th, 2021. And that's it.
Janice, did you get the report from the
Mr. Giosa?
I might
Yes.
have forgotten, yes. I neglected to mention that one. That'll be A14.
Okay, and last, I don't know, I think Paul Sionis submitted a PowerPoint for tonight.
Yeah, I have that on the screen,
Okay.
so I'll make that A15.
Okay. Great, thanks, Janice. All right, so can we have Mr. Debacci sworn in?
Can I just, his name appeared in print on the screen. Could I just see that again so I could write it down correctly?
I don't see him in the
Where'd
participant
he
list
go?
anymore.
I think he's
Uh-oh.
gone. Yeah, I think we lost him.
Uh-oh. Hopefully he's coming back.
He got tired of listening to me, I guess.
When he turned off the TV, he probably turned off the computer and by mistake.
Whoops.
Well,
Can I ask a question while we're waiting
sure.
about something Alan said? So Janice, in your planning report, you said this is in the C2 zone. Alan says it's in the C1. And
It's in the C1.
Well,
I don't, yes.
so
If my report says C2, that's a mistake.
yes, because you
Well-
said it's only 47 feet, the maximum size of the building, where
4
C1
stories.
says it's 66 feet. So that's a big difference.
Oh, no, the C2, that's the master plan.
Right.
Okay, so what applies? Does the 4 feet, the 47 feet or the 66 feet?
We can get into that. The 66 feet, I think it's 65. That's the zoning. So the issue here is the master plan is inconsistent with the zoning, and I was just by referencing the master plan emphasizing some of the recommendations that are in the master plan that are not in our zoning ordinance.
Okay, so we'll talk about that later.
Well, can we address that now and try to get that out of the way, especially since we're waiting for
Well,
Mr. Debacci?
Mr. Debacci is an attendee now, and Ms. Talley needs to, if you would, Ms. Talley, bring him on as a panelist.
Okay. He's back.
Andre, you there?
I think he'll just need to connect his audio,
Okay.
which isn't connected yet.
And I guess I just need the spelling of his name.
I can handle that, Arthur. It's
Yeah.
okay.
And I guess I just need the spelling of his name.
It's D-J-I-B-A-T-C-H-E.
I just need the spelling of his.
D-A-I.
H-I-B-E. Okay. B-A-T-C-H-A. Okay. Mr. Jibachi, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Very good. Oh, there you are.
Yes.
May I ask you to raise your right hand, please, sir? Mr. Jibachi, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
This is going to be a little bit of a problem, I can see.
Yes.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. I'm going to swear you twice, Mr. Jibachi. Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I'm going to swear you twice, Mr. Jibachi.
Mr. Debache, if you don't mind, I don't know if you're watching on YouTube or also on your TV, if you could mute those, but keep the audio on your computer or wherever you're connected right now with the video, that would help reduce the echoes that we're hearing. Those, but keep the audio on your computer or wherever you're connected right now with the video, that would help reduce the echoes that we're hearing.
It's gonna be a long meeting if this keeps up.
My testimony may be even briefer than I anticipated. My testimony may be even briefer than I anticipated, brother.
Is it better now?
Well, let's see if
Andre?
we get a
Is it
feedback.
better now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
So, Mr. Jibachi, would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
My name is Andre Dibache. I'm the president of the AD Holding 10 Elm Street.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So, Andre, you just indicated you're the president of the applicant AD Holding 10 Elm Street, Inc., correct?
Yes.
Are you the only shareholder? Do you own all of the stock in that corporation as well?
Yes.
Okay. And has your corporation entered into a contract to purchase the property at 10 Elm Street in
Yes.
Montclair? Okay, and that's contingent upon obtaining necessary land use approvals, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just if you would, just take a few minutes and just give the board the benefit of your background and experience in real estate development.
So I have over 10 years experience on the real estate development. I started as a lender. I used to work with the West Fargo Bank, and I was senior relationship manager. So I was working with the developer, helping them getting a loan. So I was funding them. And 5 years ago, I jumped to the other bar and started to invest myself. So I currently own a similar property in Maplewood, Irvington, and Newark.
Are any of those properties similar to the project you're proposing for 10 Elm Street?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And what is it that attracted you to this particular property in Montclair?
Oh, Montclair is one of my favorite town in New Jersey. I always dreamed to invest there. And when this opportunity came to me, I was so excited and just like a dream becoming true. So I'm very excited to do this investment in Montclair because it's one of the towns that I like the most.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have for Mr. Jibachi.
Questions from the board? Any questions from the public of Mr. Jibachi's statement?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, just, Mr. Bocci was just asking if there's any members of the public who are listening that had questions of you concerning what you said.
I've unmuted the members of the public, so if you have any questions, ask them now.
Doesn't sound like anyone
Okay.
has any questions. So Alan,
Yes.
move on.
I'll call my next
Next
witness,
witness.
Paul Sionis.
Mr. Sionis, can you hear me, sir? I'm afraid I can't hear you.
It doesn't appear that Mr. Sionis has his audio connected. Now he does.
But you're on now. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Ah, good. I'm going to ask you a question that I guess you've heard a couple of times before tonight. If you would raise your right hand, and do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
My name is Paul Sionis. I'm the principal architect of Sionis Architecture, located at 8 Hillside Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, not surprisingly, I'm offering Mr. Sionis as an expert in the field of architecture. I would hope the board would accept his qualifications.
And the board is very familiar with Mr. Sionis's qualifications and will accept him.
Thank you. Paul, you prepared the architectural drawings for this application, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you also prepared a PowerPoint presentation to assist you in presenting and discussing those plans with the board this evening?
Yes, I did.
And I think that was already marked as A15. So, and it looks like your PowerPoint is on the screen. So would you take the board through the plans with the help of your PowerPoint?
Okay, I'm happy to. I would like to request that we not go to 1 a.m. And Janice was there, Betsy Dolan, our traffic person, was there, Alan and I were there. Okay, that's just an aside. It's a plea. So the first slide is the survey map of 10 Elm Street. So 10 Elm, it's known as Lot 2 within Block 3103. It's in the C1 zone, Central Business Center area. It's an irregular shaped lot with approximately 76 feet of frontage on Elm Street and a depth of about 290 feet. The lot size is a little bit less than 1/2 of an acre. It's 0.412 acres. The lot's located on the west side of Elm Street, about 90 feet south of Bloomfield Avenue. The lot has a slight slope of about 2 feet from the rear of the property, which is the west, to the front of the property, which is the east. As you're probably aware, the property is improved with 2 buildings. The front building is a 1-story masonry building that has 2 tenants, the carpet store and also the auto supply store. And then there's also the separate detached garage in the back right or northwest corner of the property. And as some of you who've lived here as long as I have know, this was previously a car dealership. It was Montclair Bloomfield Dodge for many years. Along the north side of the property is a 12-foot wide easement. According to a title search, the easement was established in 1921 by the Crane family, and it serves as a right-of-way from 292 Bloomfield Avenue, which is at the northwest corner of Gates Avenue and Bloomfield Avenue, where the Greek Taverna restaurant is on the ground floor. So there's an easement. It's still in the deed, even though there are trees on the adjoining property at 292 Bloomfield Avenue, trees and a trash enclosure and a curb and a fence preventing access from 292 Bloomfield Avenue onto this subject property, but it is still listed in the deed of this property and the property 292 Bloomfield Avenue. Next slide, please. Okay, second slide, this is a street view taken from Google Earth. And this shows the 12-foot wide asphalt driveway on the right side or north side of the building, and that's the easement. According to the title search, that easement was established in 1921 to allow for the passage of vehicles, pedestrians, and livestock from 292 Bloomfield Avenue to Elm Street. So historically, the building at 292 Bloomfield Avenue was a livery stable, and that's where people would leave their horses and carriages when they would take the train from the Lackawanna Plaza Station, which was built like 8 years earlier in 1913. So this existing building is a one-story masonry building. According to town records, this was built in 1923, 2 years after the easement was established. A small portion of the building, the front of the building, is clad with brick. The rest of the building, the majority of the building is just painted block. And as I wrote there, according to the town records, the variance was received from the zoning board in 1942 to utilize the building for the war effort until 6 months after the war. So it has had an interesting history, excuse me. Next slide, please, slide 3. So this is the satellite view from Bing Maps. As you can see, and as you all know, the property is surrounded by a variety of uses. The south side and majority of the west side adjoin the Arbor Gate apartments. And I remember before Arbor Gates was developed, that was also an automobile dealership. That was Carroll Chevrolet. So that was developed into 30 apartments, and the parking for Arbor Gate is behind our subject property. So it's off of Gates Avenue, directly behind 10 Elm Street is the parking lot for Arbor Gate. To the north of the property is the Exxon gas station that's at the corner of Bloomfield Avenue and Elm Street. A portion of 6-8 Gates Avenue, portion of 6-8 Gates Avenue abuts the rear of this property, a small portion, and parking lot for 292 Bloomfield Avenue also adjoins the subject property, partially there where the cursor is. Okay, next slide, please. So the proposal is to remove the existing building and then construct a new 5-story residential building with 22 good-sized dwelling units, plus a 1,100 square foot professional office space that will be on the second floor of this building. The building steps down from the 5 stories at the front facade to 2 stories in height at the southeast corner, and it also steps down to 4 stories in the front center of the building. The pedestrian entrance is on the front left at the southeast corner, and the vehicular entry is in the center of the building through an overhead door. The front northeast corner will be a small leasing office and leasing display office. Building, as I said, is 5 stories, 59 feet tall, and in this C1 zone, we're allowed 6 stories, 67 feet in height. And based on density, we're allowed 22 dwelling units with the mixed use with the office and residential. The ground floor will contain 44 parking stalls, plus there'll be a 5-stall credit for EV-ready stalls, as per the recent New Jersey statute that gives a credit for EV-ready parking stalls. So we're providing 5 EV electric vehicle parking stalls, which gives us an additional credit of 5 parking spaces. The 12-foot easement has to remain, so that will remain. The asphalt will be removed. The first 45 feet of length from the Elm Street public sidewalk will be replaced with permeable pavers, and it will be utilized as a loading zone for delivery vehicles, FedEx, UPS, and even moving trucks can use that. And then there'll be after the 45 feet, when the building makes an angle, there'll be a 4-foot wide permeable paver sidewalk leading to 2 pedestrian doors towards the rear of the building. One is an exit door from the first floor parking level, and the other is an exit door from the rear stairway. The curbing along the front of this property is painted yellow, and it's all no parking on the front of the subject property. So with this proposal, no on-street parking spaces will be affected. Next slide, please. Okay, slide 5. This is showing the typical unit layouts and unit distribution. The table 1 shown on this slide is directly from the planning department's memo. Shows the the number of units, and as I said, there's 22 units. The units that are highlighted in yellow are the affordable units. There's a total of 8 2-bedroom units and a total of 14 3-bedroom units. And these are large units. Mr. Chibachi specifically asked for large units with amenities. The units range in size from a small of 1,325 square feet to a large of 2,350 square feet. And these are two of the typical units. The top left is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom affordable unit. This will be on the 4th floor, and you can see 2 good-sized bedrooms, great walk-in closets, good kitchen, living dining area with a exterior balcony, two full bathrooms and a laundry room. Every one of the units in the building will have a terrace or balcony to the exterior. The bottom left drawing is one of the 2-bedroom plus a den market rate unit. So this type of unit's been popular in the last few years, where it's 2 bedrooms plus a small den that could be used as a home office, or people have used them for yoga studios. But again, a good kitchen, living dining room arrangement, 2 full bedrooms with walk-in closets, 2 full bathrooms, and a good-sized balcony. Next slide, please. Slide 6. Slide 6 is the ground floor of the building, the proposed 1st floor. The pedestrian entry to the building is marked with the blue arrow, leading into a lobby with an elevator. Vehicles will enter the building through an overhead door, which are set back from the main facade. So the 2 yellow arrows, one is the entrance door, and the other exit is the exit door. Building residents and tenants in the professional office space will have key fobs and cell phone access to open and close the overhead doors. The visitors will be provided with a one-time access code for a specific time period to enter the overhead doors. Typically, this will be on their cell phones. The plan accommodates 44 parking stalls plus a credit for 5 EV, electric vehicle ready stalls, as allowed by the state of New Jersey, for a total parking of 49 stalls, and 59 stalls are required by the ordinance for the 22 units and the 1,100 square feet of office space. So 2 ADA spaces, 2 barrier-free spaces are proposed, and I mark those in red on this plan in the bottom right there, stalls 39 and 40, and they're the ones closest to the elevator. In the original drawings that were filed, we also proposed 2 mechanical stackers within this garage, but based on reading the consultant's report and discussing it with our client, those stackers have been eliminated. So I've put an X on the plan where the 2 stackers were previously proposed. There seemed to be a lot of disadvantages with having the stackers. It provided 2 more spaces, but it's been discouraged, and we prefer to ask for a 1 parking space variance rather than use the stackers. There are 4 sets of tandem parking spaces for a total of 8 that are proposed, and those stalls will be assigned to 4 of the dwelling units. So people who have 2 cars will each get one of the tandem spaces. 18 other stalls will be assigned to residents. So, and then 4 of the stalls will be assigned to the office in the building. There'll be an 1,100 square foot office, which requires 4 parking spaces. So 4 of the spaces will be assigned to the office. We're not sure, but our client has said that the office spaces may be assigned during typical office hours, which is Monday through Friday, 8 through 6. So we'll have to hear what the decision is on that. However, 30 of the 44 parking spaces will be assigned, leaving 14 spaces unassigned. Besides the parking on this level, there's that 9-foot by 16.5-foot leasing display space in the top right, the top northeast corner, and that'll have a storefront window to the exterior. And then in addition, on this ground floor, there'll be utility rooms such as a sprinkler room, a water and electric room, as well as a trash room with a trash chute from all of the floors above, plus a general storage room in the northwest corner of the building. The building will be constructed along the front property line and also along the south property lines. But it'll be set in 12 feet along that northern property line because of that easement that we have to maintain. At the top left where the easement ends, the building will be constructed on the property line. Let's go to the next slide, please, number 7. So number 7 is a black and white version of it, and the rear area that's shown in blue, that's the rear yard setback is required to be 10 feet in this zone. We originally on these drawings maintained that 10-foot setback and surrounded the rear of those parking areas with a 7-foot high masonry screen wall. However, in the consultant's reports, they frowned upon keeping that area open to the air above. So we are now asking for a variance to cover that rear 10-foot area with a terrace connected to the rear of the building. So the main building, the 4 floors above, will still be set back 10 feet from the property line, but that blue area we're now proposing to cover with a flat roof terrace that would be accessible to the 2nd floor above. And directly behind this to the west is a parking lot for the Arbor Gate property.
Paul,
yeah.
Just a question. Forgive me for interrupting.
Please.
But the terrace that's going to be provided over those parking spaces, what's the height of that from ground level?
So that would to match the floor level of the floor above, it'll be 12 feet above the ground level.
Okay.
The wall that we proposed originally was 7 feet above ground level, but it was open above that blue area, and that's why we were proposing trees in the corners of that blue area because it was open to the air. But now that it's recommended for us to cover that with a terrace, we would not have trees there, and that would be closed. And the reason it was recommended not to have that open was because of concerns with snow and ice and rain coming into the parking garage. So we tried to avoid the variance for the 10-foot setback, but by covering this parking, it seems to be a benefit both to this applicant and to the neighbors in the back, that it won't be open to a parking lot.
Okay, well, clearly, so that's a new variant.
Correct.
That's a new variance. I was not aware of that.
Right. So we're asking for that 2 new variances: the parking variance to eliminate the stackers, so it will be deficient by 1 space. And we're also asking now for the variance to cover the rear 10 feet of the building at the ceiling of the 1st floor level.
So the rear yard setback is actually 0.
Now it'll be 0, correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Or we could go back to what was originally provided, but we thought this was a better plan in light of the comments we got from the board's professionals. But, the applicant would do it either way, the original plan or the plan that Paul just discussed. The variance would be required either way. One would be for the parking setback and the other would be for the building setback.
Right. And as I stated, directly behind this property to the west is the Arbor Gate parking lot. Okay, so as part of this plan is to have 5 EV-ready parking stalls that are shown in this plan. Those would be no fee to the users of those stalls, but those stalls would not be assigned. But any user of this building could use those electric vehicle charging stations, and those are type 2 charging stations that would be wall mounted, as shown in the image on the bottom of the slide. We just had that installed at Hillside Square where my office is, and they charge pretty quickly. In addition to those 5 EV stations, the plan is also to put a 240 volt conduit around the perimeter of the parking area that electrical outlets could be attached to, so that every one of the people who park in this garage can have access to charging for their electric vehicles, anticipating that there'll be more electric vehicles, in the next few years. So 240 volt conduit will allow for overnight charging for most cars with, just a regular plug-in around the perimeter. And the applicant discussed that this may be a monthly fee to the people to use this, and something similar to what older apartment buildings, when people wanted to put a window air conditioner and they would pay, $10 or $15 a month. So they've discussed doing something like that for the 240 volt conduit around the perimeter, not for the EV stalls, but for the rest of the garage. Also, permeable paving is shown at the top right of this drawing, so that's for the 12-foot wide loading area, and then that 4-foot wide path. And then the rest of the easement will be a grass lawn, so all that asphalt will be removed. Okay, next slide, please. Slide 8. Slide 8 is the second floor plan. Basically, there'll be 6 good-sized dwelling units on this floor. There'll be a 2-story high lobby at the bottom right there, which is the southeast corner of the building. There'll be a locked and keyed and also cell phone access to a parcel room on the second floor. So deliveries made to this building, especially by FedEx or UPS, the delivery people will have access to the lobby and to a parcel room just to the right or east side of that lobby. And that'll, residents will have access to that both with a key or either cell phone access or a key fob. The floor will also contain an 1,100 square foot office, professional office space, which is in the lower southeast side of the building. And that will also have locked access from the common hallway and from the elevator and stairway. So that'll be a rental office that the applicant will lease to a tenant in the future. Another door will be provided in this office to allow easier access to the rear fire stair at the rear of the building. Next slide, please. This slide is basically the same second floor plan in black and white. It's a little easier to read, showing that 10-foot area in blue will now be we're proposing that to be a flat roof terrace to cover the rear of the parking area, and we request a variance for that to not comply with the rear yard setback. Okay, next slide, please. Slide number 10. This is the third floor plan. There'll be 6 additional dwelling units on this plan. All of them, again, will have great closet space, laundry rooms, or large laundry closets. Every dwelling unit within this building will have terraces or balconies. Some of the units will actually have two balconies. This floor will have a locked bike room for the tenants' use, and there'll also be a locker storage room that will accommodate 14 tenants on this floor. In addition to the locked storage room and the bike room, there'll also be a management office. So the applicant intends to have a building manager, building superintendent full-time within this building. Next slide, please. So this is also the black and white version of that. Again, it shows a little clearer the locked bike room. That will accommodate up to 22 bicycles in that, 44. So it's 22 stacked bicycles for a total of 44. So each tenant could have 2 bicycles stored in that bike room. There's a common trash room just to the left of the front stairwell. And that common trash room is repeated on every floor with a trash chute leading down to a trash room in the first floor level. And the building manager or super will be responsible for taking the trash from the trash room in the bottom and arranging with a private carter to take the trash away from this building. Let's see. Next slide, please. Slide 12. Slide 12 is the 4th floor plan. This also will have 6 dwelling units plus another tenant locker room with 8 additional locker storage units. This floor will also have a fitness room for the tenants of this building, and not for use by anyone outside of this building. Again, these are all good size units, you know, all 2 and 3 bedroom units with a minimum of 2 bathrooms. Next slide, please. Slide 13. So this is just a black and white version, easy to read, you know, that shows the common fitness room for the tenant use, plus the additional locker room for 8 storage units. So we're proposing 22 individual storage units on 2 floors within these 2 locker rooms. Next slide, slide 14. 14 is the top floor. This is the 5th floor. The 5th floor is set back 46 feet from the front of the building and the 4 floors below. We're proposing a common rooftop terrace of 46 feet by 38.5 feet. We're proposing plantings in the center of the terrace and around the perimeter of the terrace. We propose cutouts in the parapet wall and replacing that wall with glass guardrails so that people down below, you know, could look up diagonally and see the plantings at the top of this building, and also be a nicer view for the people who are going to use this terrace. The roof terrace will also contain a pergola in the center with a sunshade. We'll have seating arrangements. In addition to that common space, there'll be a common tenant lounge, 1,155 square foot tenant lounge for the residents of the building. That lounge will have a kitchenette and a wet bar plus seating arrangements. And we did the same thing at the vestry building at 147 Bloomfield Avenue, and it's been very successful. Tenants come up and use the lounge or sit out on the open terrace. There'll be four dwelling units on this floor, just like the other floors. Each will have great closet space. And as I stated, out of the 22 units, there'll be 4 affordable units in the building. And some of the affordable units are as large or larger than the market rate units. So you can see on this floor in the center, bottom center, unit 504 is the affordable unit. That's an 1,800 square foot, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom unit. And I could say with certainty, I think these are the largest affordable units so far in Montclair. So I'm proud of that. There'll be a large building storage room off of the common hallway, that, you know, where the cursor is. That'll be available to all of the tenants. And again, there'll be trash rooms on each floor level. Next slide, please. This is just a black and white version, same thing. Next slide, slide 16. Slide 16 is a 3D rendering of the rooftop terrace. So that's the pergola in the center with the canopy over it for shading. There'll be planting around the perimeter of the rooftop terrace. The roof will have a stone terrace flooring that'll be mounted on pedestals above the roofing material so that water flows. The plantings in this case, and also I'll show you the upper roof, will be selected by a green roof consultant because we specifically want the plants to be drought tolerant and water efficient. This floor level, this common roof terrace will not be a green roof, even though it will have a lot of planting, but the upper roofing will be a green roof. So if we go to the next slide, please, slide 17. So the upper main level, this is the highest roof. This will be a green roof. It will contain the HVAC equipment. The units will be surrounded by a 4-foot high composite horizontal board equipment screen, but the majority of the roof will be a green roof with low plantings and continuous trays. The green roof will provide several benefits as I listed on here. It's going to improve the stormwater management, reduce the urban heat island effect, improve the air quality. It will insulate the building, improve the efficiency of the mechanical equipment, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and it will extend the life of the roof. So we've tried to do green roofs on other buildings, but this is where we hope this will be achieved and be successful. The perimeter of the roof area will be a gravel crushed stone ballast, showing that light color surrounding the green roof. And access to the green roof will not be for the tenants. This will only be for building personnel. But they'll be accessing this upper roof through a roof hatch the bottom right. And you can see the walkway pavers that lead from the roof hatch both to the mechanical equipment and to the green roof area. Next slide, please.
Hey, Paul, before you go on, guys, could you just flip back? I just had a question. What is the area, in the upper left-hand corner that's shown on?
In gray, that's the area and several floors below. Those are some of the roof terraces below, as are those triangles that are sticking out at the top of this plan. Those are terraces on the floors below.
Okay, thank you.
Triangles and trapezoids. Next slide, please. Slide 18. This is the same thing in black and white. It's just we added the heights of the roofs on this plan just to make it clear. Okay, next slide. This slide 19 is the front elevation in color. So this will be, the building will be a combination of brick and metal insulated panels. The balconies, as you can see on the right side of this drawing, balconies facing north will be a semi-transparent glass walled balcony. Some of the balconies on the front of the building and on the south side will have metal railings. At the DRC meeting, I was asked if it would be too hot to sit on these balconies if you're next to the metal panels. And I contacted Carmel. I contacted the manufacturer of the insulated panels, and they said that they use a cool exterior coating that minimizes solar absorption while also allowing for solar reflectivity. And even with a matte finish, it makes it comfortable for someone to sit there on a sunny day next to the exterior wall material. The top center element, that upside down triangle, that's a design element that's added to the face of the roof above that tenant lounge on that 5th floor. And that tenant lounge will have a higher ceiling. So the tenant lounge will have a 15-foot ceiling. The other floors will have a 9-foot 1-inch ceiling height to the underside of the structure. The 5th floor will have a 10-foot 2-inch ceiling height, and then that ground floor with the parking, the minimum ceiling height will be 10 feet 10 inches. Okay. And then again, I just want to point out that we've done the cutouts on the parapet wall on the top of the 4th floor at that common roof area, and those will have glass guardrails so that when you're standing across the street or on even at the corner of Bloomfield Avenue, you look up and you'll see these glass cutouts with a lot of planting behind them. It'll be a nice place for the tenants to stand up there and look out. Next slide, slide 20. 20 is the same thing in black and white, so we could go right to 21. Slide 21, the top is the north elevation. That's the view looking from Bloomfield Avenue or across Bloomfield Avenue if the Exxon station wasn't there and if the parking and trees weren't there for 292 Bloomfield Avenue. The base of the building on the entire, both sides and at the rear will be brick. The front left on the north side, on the north elevation, are those insulated metal panels. And the rear will be brick of this building, all 5 stories. The south elevation is the
Paul?
Yes.
Could you describe just by color what's brick? Is all that gray, the dark gray is brick?
The dark gray is brick. The lighter gray to the left is those insulated metal panels. That beigeish color, those are the semi-transparent glass balcony walls.
Okay.
Okay. And the whole base is brick. And then if you look at the bottom view, that's the view from probably that view you would see from 24 Elm Street. 24 Elm Street is 2 properties to the south. That's the 4-story building that was approved by this planning board. I don't remember what year that was, Mr. Wynn. I don't know if you do. So this is the view of the south elevation, and the light gray part is all brick. The dark gray are insulated metal panels. The bottom right, that rust color, those are also insulated panels, and these may not be the exact colors, but we want to do a color such as that to highlight the pedestrian entry to the building.
So just to be sure, this bluish bit, the blue, I'll call it light blue, and the dark gray, those are insulated panels and everything else is brick.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you can see the HVAC equipment screen on the top of the building on both of these elevations. So that's a 4-foot-high equipment screen, which would hide the view of the HVAC units. Next slide, please. Slide 22, this is the rear elevation. This is the one that would face the parking lot of Arbor Gate. And this is the lower portion of this slide showed what we proposed originally, which was a 7-foot-high masonry wall to surround the rear 10 feet of that parking level, the first floor parking level. However, as I said, when we read through the township's consultants' memos, they frowned on having the parking level open to the sky because of snow, rain, ice, sleet, and thought it could be a security issue also. So we agree with them to raise the height of this wall to where that lowest person is sitting on the balcony. So that would be the first floor, the floor level of the second floor. So we'd raise this wall from 7 feet to 12 feet and have a flat roof over it that could serve as a roof terrace for the rear of the access from the rear of the second floor. Next slide, please. This is the streetscape. Part of the requirements in filing an application was supposed to show a streetscape to show the building in context to its surroundings. As you can see, the bottom right is the existing Exxon gas station and that convenience store. To the left is the Arbor Gate condominium project with the 30 units. And to the left of that is the 4-story 24 Elm Street. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the signage master plan from our drawings. Several signs are proposed. And as you can see from that top image, one of the signs will be the building identification sign, which is number 2. And those are 12-inch high individual letters with the name of the building to be installed on the portion directly above the entry doors to the building. Other signs would be the street number. So this is 2 individual numbers. Number 10, they'd be 6 inches high. Directly below the street number is a triangle that I marked in red with the number 9. And that may be used if we use trusses. We're required by law to have a little triangle next to the front doors of the building that'll assist firemen knowing that there are trusses in the building in case of a fire. And then directly below that is a rectangle shown as number 8, and that's the building directory sign. And that'll be mounted to the left of the lobby entrance, and that's so people could find their way into the building and be able to buzz their way in, or calling one of the tenants inside. Next slide, please.
Just a quick question, Paul. Where's the office identification sign?
So it's only on the directory. So on that number 8, that rectangle, that's a 6 square foot, like a 2 foot by 3 foot directory, and on that we'll list who the office occupant is. We're not calling out any larger signs for the office user. And then I circled 2 things on this just before I move on. One of the consultants' report was they didn't see signage for the loading area, and so we are calling for a wall-mounted sign on the base of the wall next to that loading area on the north side of the building. That'll just be a 12-inch by 18-inch sign stating that this is a loading area. And then the other thing I circled was the word stop. One of the consultants' memos asked if we were going to have a stop sign or a stop bar inside of the ground floor so that vehicles would stop before exiting through the overhead doors. And we are calling for a stop sign. We also recommend a stop bar painted on the driveway. And then the other thing we have discussed that is having the flashing lights mounted in the sidewalk, as we did at 256 Park Street. That was part of an application to this board several years ago, and that's worked out pretty well if you've been to Watchung Plaza and seen those lights flash when a vehicle is exiting that driveway or that garage, and people know that that's happening. It's just little flashing yellow lights and works pretty well. Okay, next slide, please. So these are the light fixtures. The light fixtures were, as I wrote in the bottom of this slide, they're selected not to be noticed. So these will all be LED fixtures, lights mounted flush into the garage ceiling, which is that fixture A. Fixture B is mounted on the exterior wall as emergency light fixtures by the exits. Fixture C is just a black box mounted on the wall at each balcony or terrace, so it shines down. And the point is so that these light fixtures are not noticed, so they should blend in with the facade. But the light fixture D is the same thing, mounted on one of the exterior piers, and then to illuminate, to highlight the facades. And then light fixture E is on the rooftop terrace pergola to provide lighting there. That's kind of discreet. Next slide, please. And this again is the 3D view looking at this building, looking you know, from across the street, almost standing in the Firestone parking lot, except if you were on a tall ladder. Next slide we'll go to is 27. And I think we have time to go through these, right, Alan or Mr. Nguyen? Could I continue? Right, we're still okay to continue?
I think you're muted, John.
Okay, well, I'll continue.
Yeah, it doesn't make any point to stop you. At
Okay,
this point,
so I'll go through the memos. I think that'll be helpful. So first is the Planning Department memo dated November 15th, and for each of the items, I have a response in yellow. So the first one is that you know, it was in reference to the variance for parking. We required 50 spaces. 49 spaces were provided, and in the memo it says that the stackers could not be counted as part of the required parking. So in yellow I put that we've eliminated or withdrawn those mechanical parking stackers from this application. We're providing 49 spaces and 50 are required, and that in the level G consulting report it states that there should be a peak demand of 37 to 47 parking stalls for this building, inclusive of the visitor parking. I don't know if we'll hear her tonight, but our traffic consultant Betsy Dolan will report on that also. Second is that a variance is required from 347-83C1, requiring surface parking areas to be set back at least 4 feet from the side and rear property line. So all of the parking spaces are enclosed within the ground floor of the building. So we're asking for a variance request to cover that last 10 feet of the building with a terrace. So there's still a variance request for parking being less than 4 feet from our property line. Third item, variances required from Montclair 347-102A, which requires that parking areas and spaces shall be paved with a hard surface paving and shall be accessible from similarly paved areas called aisles. Basically, this refers to the tandem spaces. So the tandem spaces where you have one car in front of the other. So each pair of tandem spaces shall be assigned to a single dwelling unit. Those tenants who have 2 cars will have first right to apply for the tandem spaces. There will be assigned parking spaces for each of the 22 dwelling units, and 4 of the tandem spaces, which equals 8 spaces, will be assigned to 4 units. So 18 single spaces will be assigned to 18 dwelling units. 4 of the spaces could be assigned to the office, and which means 30 of the 44 physical parking spaces will be assigned. But yeah, we're proposing 4 tandem spaces, which equals 8 spaces in total. Next slide, please. Slide 28.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. It's not too late yet. Okay, so this is just a continuation of the memo. And this number 4 states questions if we're providing the required storage areas for these tenants. So in yellow, I listed that there are 14 storage lockers on the 3rd floor. There are 8 storage lockers on the 4th floor, which is a total of 22 individual storage lockers for the 22 dwelling units. And the minimum storage locker size will be 200 cubic feet at a minimum. And in the ordinance, it just states that storage shall be provided for each dwelling unit of 200 feet. And we've discussed this for the last few years. There's that typo in the ordinance that says feet rather than cubic feet or square feet. So we take that to mean cubic feet. Common storage area is required to be 50 cubic feet per dwelling unit. So 22 times 50 is 1,100 cubic feet of common storage required, and we're providing a 1,890 cubic foot storage room at the rear of the 1st floor. We're also providing that 3,024 cubic foot bike room to accommodate up to 44 bikes, and also a 12,745 cubic foot storage room on the 3rd floor. So the proposal meets or exceeds the minimum requirements for storage. And, the 5th item is that a waiver is required from Montclair 281-9B, which requires that each parking space consists of a rectangular area having minimum dimensions of 9 by 19. And some of the spaces are 17 feet and some are 18 feet long. So response is that 18-foot long parking stalls have been accepted by the township as standard length stalls, and New Jersey Residential Site Improvement Standard requires an 18-foot length for residential parking. 17-foot long stalls are permitted as small car parking spaces or compact spaces, and anywhere there's a 17-foot stall, there will be a sign that says compact car parking only. Next slide, please. So the last one is a waiver required from 281-9D, which requires a minimum parking aisle width of 24 feet. And the driveway aisle is 23 feet wide for 30 of the spaces. And then the parking aisle is 21 feet for 9 of the spaces. So the 23-foot width aisle at the standard parking stalls is 1 foot less than standard, but should be acceptable because these are going to be regular uses to this building. They'll become familiar with this parking layout in a dimension that's only short by 1 foot. It's different if this was a shopping mall or a store where people aren't used to the spaces and they come in and there's, it's short by 1 foot. So since it's regular users who are going to live here, they will be used to the slightly smaller parking aisle. The 21-foot aisle width at small car parking stalls is permitted in the ordinance. So that will be near the compact car spaces. The parking aisle width can be and may be reduced for small car spaces according to the ordinance. Next slide, please. Oh, just keep going. Okay. Continue with planning considerations. This states that a 10-foot step back for all stories above the 3rd story should be provided as recommended in the master plan. Although the building complies with and is less than the height allowed within the C1 zone district. I think, Carmel, you asked about this before. The building street facade varies from 2 stories at the front left, or the south east corner, up to 4 stories in the front center. The majority of the 5th floor is set back 46 feet from the street facade. The 10-foot step back is a recommendation in the master plan, but it's never been adopted into the zoning ordinance. Second is testimony must be provided to support the parking variance. We'll have Betsy Dolan will talk about traffic and parking, but the proposed parking stackers have been eliminated from the plan. The applicant intends to assign parking spaces to building tenants, which I've already reviewed. Also, as far as electric vehicle charging, the plan is to install the continuous conduit around the perimeter of the parking stalls to allow for the 240 volt of electricity to supply receptacles at each parking stall, suitable for use by all of the tenants. The 5 EV parking spaces will be unassigned stalls, but those will allow for quicker charging of electric vehicles, and they're as required by New Jersey statute. No parking fees will be assessed for the affordable units. That's just a comment. Street trees shall be planted at the sidewalk planting strip. The applicant agrees to that. The applicant shall confirm no parking fees will be assessed for affordable units. The applicant agrees to that. The application of the 20% inclusionary zoning set aside leaves a fractional obligation of 0.4 units. So that works out to $78,956 obligation by the applicant to the township, which was based on the 0.4 times $197,391. The applicant has agreed to that financial contribution. And I believe that goes into the Housing Trust Fund. Okay, next slide, please. All right, everybody okay so far? This is the traffic review letter from Brightview Engineering. Alan, should I do this or let Betsy handle this? I could do what I could
I
handle.
think you should point out, the plan revisions that have been made to address the comments.
Okay. I mean, the first, well, just quickly, there's a solar powered sign, school speed limit sign in the front of in the public sidewalk that's not on the site plan. So that sign will remain. The applicant should provide information about changes to on-street parking. As I stated, there's a no parking painted yellow curb in front of the property, so there's no parking allowed there. So we're not affecting any on-street parking. The consultant number 3, the plans, it's not clear if the plans provide any vehicular, regulatory, or warning signage. So as I stated, we do show a stop sign. We do recommend there be a stop bar painted on the inside, and we do recommend the flashing lights in the sidewalk to warn pedestrians. Fourth question is about the bike room and the locker room, whether they're used or they're open to the public, and how will the tenants get their bicycles up to the bike room. So these spaces, the bike room and the locker rooms, and the fitness room, are strictly for the use of the tenants. The public will not be allowed in to use these facilities unless you're a guest of the tenant. It's expected that the tenants will carry their bikes onto the elevator and up to the bike room, as is typical in many buildings that have bike rooms on the upper floors. A loading area, what's the purpose of, sorry, Carmel.
Question. So are strollers also kept in a bike room?
They can be, but we provided an extra space in the bike room, anticipating that would be some of the bike rooms. Some of the nice bike rooms have had like bicycle repair areas with benches, lockers, air pumps. So we left room for that, but we could certainly allow that for strollers in this, which makes sense.
Yeah, okay. I just was curious about how you expect to deal with that.
Okay. The fifth item was about the loading area. So the loading area is provided on the north side of the building. Basically, as I wrote in bold text, is that the loading space is intended for parcel deliveries and moving trucks. Items will be delivered through the front lobby and up through the elevator. The Brightview Engineering asked for a large wheelbase turning template, and Paul Anderson, our civil engineering consultant, will provide that. So number 6, it's unclear from the site plans if any signage is proposed for the loading zone. As I stated a few minutes ago, we're showing a wall-mounted sign indicated in the master signage schedule that says loading zone. Next slide, please. Next slide is a continuation of the Brightview Engineering memo. It asks if there's a support column between the 2 overhead doors, and yes, a support column separates the 2 10-foot wide overhead doors. Number 8, will overhead doors be provided for the parking areas? How will those be controlled? So as I stated before, and as I reviewed with the applicant, all the tenants will receive a key fob and or cell phone access to operate the overhead doors. Building visitors will be provided with a timed access code for a specific time period to enter the overhead doors. So the public will not be allowed in and out of the overhead doors unless they have key fob or the cell phone access. But the cell phone access for visitors will be a timed access code. So that's either for visitors to that 1,100 square foot office or visitors to the apartments. Additional information should be provided regarding trash pickup. So the trash pickup will be coordinated by the building manager, who will be on site, in addition to private pickup service arranged by the building manager and the owner. Site triangles for the proposed driveway shall be provided to confirm adequate sight lines. So our civil engineer, Paul Anderson, will provide that information when he testifies. Next slide, please.
Well, I think you can skip 33 and 34 because those are more appropriate for the traffic engineer.
I agree. Okay. Correct. So 33 and 34 were based on the traffic impact study. This 35 is the level G associates parking memo. First was concerned about the mechanical car lifters, and we've now eliminated those mechanical car lifters. Janice Talley in her memo stated that they would not count as part of the parking requirement anyway. So by eliminating the two lifters, we now have a one vehicle, one parking space variance request. Pedestrian access, the comment is that pedestrians must walk past parking stall number 40, which is one of the barrier-free parking spaces. And the concern is that if a vehicle overhangs that parking space, it will intrude into the 3-foot access aisle. We will call for a wheel stop to be placed within parking stall 40, which would make sure that the vehicle would not overhang that space. There's also a concern that there's a utility comment located along the south side of the access aisle, which could block passage if that utility cabinet is being serviced and the doors of the cabinet are open. Servicing the utility cabinet would be very infrequent. So I don't think that's a concern, but it's a good question. Snow and ice. There was concern about accumulation of snow and ice since we're proposing parking stalls 20 through 27 to be open to the air above. Based on this comment and some of the other comments, we're now requesting a variance to cover that area. So there will be no snow and ice falling into that parking level if we cover that area with a terrace that's accessed from the second floor. As I've said before, there'll be no effect to the neighboring property since it's a parking lot, but it'll provide a better solution with additional security, both for 10 Elm Street and also to the property to the rear. Reserve parking, there's a recommendation on which parking stalls should be reserved, and we agree with it, and I noted that in my testimony that certain parking stalls will be reserved or assigned, excuse me. Visitor parking, there's a question about how the visitor parking will work, both for the office visitors and the resident visitors. So we agreed, and with the applicant, we agreed to have the timed access code to be provided to building visitors to open the overhead doors with a cell phone app.
Excuse me, Paul,
yes.
does that timed access, it lets them out as well as in?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
But it's a limited time. So for example, it might only be for a 2-hour time period.
But it's limited getting out too?
I believe so. No, there has to be something. It has to be like a mechanical eye that lets people out. Okay. You're right. It can't just be out. Can't block them in. Sorry. Trying to rush through them. Sorry.
Locked in.
Locked in. Slide 36.
Paul, I think 36 and 37 are parking related that I think again should be deferred for the traffic engineer to address.
I agree.
And the remaining slides are for Mr. Anderson's testimony, I believe. So,
right.
I think I don't have any further questions. I just wanted to sort of wrap up your direct testimony so the board would have at least some time to ask questions before we adjourn for tonight.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Can I make a suggestion? this is the first time we're seeing this PowerPoint presentation. I would like to have a chance to look at that and perhaps ask questions next time we meet.
I agree, and
Yeah.
I also went through very quickly, so I'm happy I'll be at the next meeting to answer questions, because this now is part of the public record, this PowerPoint. It's on the town's website also.
It is today, but it hadn't been, so the public hasn't had a chance to look at it either.
Correct.
Okay.
And no offense, Alan and Paul, but now we know why you went to 1 o'clock.
I have a quick question. Are these rentals or these are rental apartments?
It is my understanding these are all rental apartments.
Okay.
And I think at this point, because there's been a lot of information that's out there, and we could ask you questions for the next hour probably.
Yeah.
I think that we would be better served by holding off our beginning the questions until next week. And I agree that I would like to take a look at your responses, particularly since you've taken the time to write down all of the answers, your answers, and how you're addressing.
Yeah,
Which
it's easier
is,
than me just saying it.
you know, I appreciate having the record. So we're going to carry this to the next meeting. Janice, when would that be?
December 13th.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine with the
And,
applicant.
I'll just well, no, I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to ask any quick questions. I'll just leave it there. And my questions will wait until till the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Sorry for going so fast, but
We understand, but you know, it is what it is. The timing is what it is.
okay.
So
Thank you, everybody.
And we just may ask you to repeat some of it next time.
That's fine. That's why I wrote it all down.
All right, guys. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
All right, do we need to announce
further
the
notice?
adjournment?
Yeah, no notices.
further notice?
And do we need any extensions, Janice?
If
Can you
do,
grant us?
we certainly consent to any necessary extension of the board's time to act.
All right.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Janice, I show in my calendar a meeting for December 6th. Is that meeting now off?
No, I have another application that night.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I don't like to do these applications with, you know, I have to have 4 weeks between continuing an application, and we already they've already noticed for somebody else has already noticed for December 6th. So
I have a conflict with that anyway, so 13th is better.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen. We'll see you
everyone.
on the 13th.
Good night.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. All right. We have bills.
I also, before we get to the bills, I think we included a calendar for next year in your packet.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody had any issues with the dates on that calendar. Or we could talk about it at the next meeting.
My only one question was why there wasn't a second meeting in September.
There must have been, I don't have my notes in front of me, but there must have been because of all the holidays in September, I wasn't able to schedule a second meeting. And so
Well,
I
it's such
just,
a festive month.
I think we could do with one less meeting.
All right.
So Janice, are you going to mail those PowerPoints?
Mail them?
Or are you
They're
just?
up on the website.
I'll
Okay.
post them on the website, yeah.
Okay, I'm just asking. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, if anybody on the board needs it mailed to them, I'm sure Janice will send them a copy. But if everybody who feels comfortable pulling them off the website, we can get them right there.
Yep.
Save another tree.
Just let me know.
All right. So bills.
Is there a motion to pay bills?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right, so our next meeting is December 6th.
All right, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving
Here, here.
and don't eat
Absolutely.
too much
Okay.
and enjoy. Good night.
Good
You
night.
too.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Have a
Good
great
night.
Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.